Good evening, I'm Laura Jones, host of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones, and welcome to the New Jersey Gubernatorial Primary Debate presented by Uber. Streaming is sponsored by Stand with Crypto, and the debate is sponsored by RWJ Barnabas Health and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. We are live at the Donald M. Payne Sr. School of Technology in Newark. A special thanks to our host, Essex County. In just a few minutes, we will begin our debate between the candidates for Republican nomination for governor in the state of New Jersey, between Jack Ciattarelli, Bill Spadea, and John Bramnick. The winner of June's primary election will go on to compete in November's general election for the seat currently held by Governor Phil Murphy. Tonight marks the final debate of the 2025 gubernatorial primaries, and we're proud to host this in-depth 2.5-hour debate focused on 3 key issues this evening: affordability and taxes, education, and crime and immigration. These debates were awarded by the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission, and we've built this format to give candidates the time and space to go beyond sound bites and really dig deep into the substance. Joining me this evening on the panel is David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, Joey Fox, congressional correspondent for the New Jersey Globe, and Matt Rooney of Save Jersey. Our questions this evening are intended for Republican primary voters. We developed these questions specifically with undecided voters in mind. Tonight's debate is designed to help those voters make an informed decision as they prepare to head to the polls on June 10th. On Sunday, we did the same for Democrats. As for the rules tonight, panelists will direct questions to individual candidates, with each getting roughly the same number of questions. Answers are limited to 60 seconds. Rebuttals to about 45 seconds. Follow-ups will also be 45 seconds. Any back and forth will be at my discretion and limited to 30 seconds. And to be clear, if your name is mentioned, that doesn't mean you've been attacked. We don't want to get into a shouting match. We want to make sure the audience and everybody is able to hear at home what the candidates have to say. Now, my job is to be moderator, to keep this debate on track. Got a bell. If I have to use it, I will, but hopefully I won't have to use it. Time now to welcome our candidates to the stage. We ask members of the audience to refrain from making noise, including clapping and other reactions during the debate. And as I introduce the candidates, this is going to be the one and only time that you, the audience, you're allowed to break that rule, the one and only time to show your appreciation with applause. We welcome to the stage now Bill Spadea. Next, we now welcome Jack Ciattarelli. And finally, we welcome John Bramnick. Candidates will have 90 seconds each for an opening statement and 90 seconds for a closing statement. The order was determined through a random selection process involving all of the campaigns prior to this evening's forum. We've gone over the rules of the debate and have a lot of questions to get to, so we're going to jump right into opening statements. Bill Spadea, you are going to go first, followed by Jack Ciattarelli, and then John Bramnick. Bill Spadea, the floor is yours, 90 seconds.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and participating in this. This is going to be a great format tonight. Congratulations, David Wildstein, for winning the bid to get this debate, because this debate goes beyond all the nasty attack ads and attack mailers that you've been seeing throughout this campaign. Tonight, we get into the nitty-gritty, the detail of who's got the best plan, the vision, and the common sense to actually save our state and put us in the right direction and end 25 years of Democratic rule. It can happen, and it's going to happen in November. Now, let me say this. You are going to hear, I'm sure, a lot about a certain endorsement that happened last week. You might even hear some bragging, perhaps a little gloating. Let me be very clear. The president endorsed a poll. A poll that was conducted and paid for by Jack's campaign. The president did not endorse a plan. The president did not endorse a set of principles. You know me, many people across the state know me from many, many years on the radio. I have been listening to the concerns of New Jerseyans for a long time now, and I will tell you this, I am proud to be standing on this stage with an opportunity to solve problems. I'm the only one who served in the United States Marine Corps. I am the only one here who is pro-life, pro-Second Amendment with an A rating from the NRA. I am happily married 30 years to my wife, Jody, who is here today. And I will tell you this, many of you know Jody, and you know she's from Rhode Island. Well, you know, Jody and I chose New Jersey to raise our kids and to build our family. And this fight is about our kids and our future grandkids, and we're ready for this fight. Thank you.
Jack Ciattarelli, your opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. President Trump endorsed me because he knows I'm the only person that can unify our party. He endorsed me because of the energy I bring to the campaign. He endorsed me because of the money we're able to raise to deliver a win. He endorsed me because of the coattails. He endorsed me because I'm the only person who can beat the Democrats in November. And the goal is to win. And so I'm honored to have his endorsement. We've got 3 weeks to go in this primary. I will continue to get up and down this state and deliver the message on what it's going to take to win this election. We're going to solve the various crises this state faces, the affordability crisis, the public safety crisis, the public education crisis, the overdevelopment crisis, the energy crisis. That's what we're going to continue to talk about, and we're going to go on and win this race for Republicans come this November. And it's not just about me. It's about every Republican down ballot. So tonight we're going to get a chance to talk about how we deliver something we haven't had in 25 years in Trenton, a Republican majority in our state house. Back in 2021, with me at the top of the ticket, we flipped 8 seats in the state legislature. That was with a little bit of wind in our face. This time we've got some real wind at our back. And with that wind, we can flip at least 13 seats in the state legislature. So the agenda I'll lay out for you tonight will be much easier to accomplish when we have a Republican majority in our state house. But I'm honored to have the president's endorsement.
John Bramnick, your opening statement.
I did not get the endorsement from Donald Trump. I waited up late at night, no phone call. But a year and a half ago at a comedy club, I opened up my announcement to run for the governor. And I said then, and I said today, that civility, respect, and statesmanship is something that is extremely important in a democracy. So when I run in this primary or in the general election, you can be assured that I will make the Republican Party proud of its candidate. And we all know that the Democrats are running scared. They're very concerned about the policies of Phil Murphy. All of those policies, whether it be energy policies, crime, affordable housing, they've all gone south. They are not proud of their record, but they want a candidate that they can beat. They don't want me. Every Democrat, every independent knows that if I'm the candidate, that Democratic candidate is going to lose. Why? Because I come to the table with the basic principles of our party. Small government, low taxes, and law and order. That's how we win as Republicans in this state. Thank you.
All right, as I mentioned in the welcoming remarks, the way we've structured this debate is divided into 3 sections: affordability and taxes, education, as well as crime and immigration. Micah Rasmussen is going to start this first round with a series of questions on affordability and taxes. Micah, over to you.
This is a question for Mr. Ciattarelli. Every candidate thinks our electric bills are too damn high. But our electric market was deregulated in 1999 when we still had a Republican governor and legislature. That law required a few years of mandatory rate discounts, but they're long gone. You've said you'll replace weak regulators, but how can any regulator control a deregulated market with rates now driven by that market?
So I think we've come to the conclusion, Mika, that maybe deregulation hasn't worked as well as we thought. And I think it's a time for New Jersey to give serious consideration, depending on what we do next with regard to energy independence. There is talk about pulling out of PJM. The Democrats are blaming PJM for everything right now, but that's not the right thing to do. They're to blame for what they've done in terms of energy. We closed our last coal burning plant. We put an unofficial moratorium on the burning of natural gas to generate electricity. They haven't expanded our nuclear footprint in South Jersey. That all changes on day one of Governor Cettarelli's administration. We'll have a new energy master plan. We're going to lift the moratorium on burning natural gas, clean and safe natural gas to generate more electricity. We'll put a shovel in the ground with regard to a 4th nuclear reactor in South Jersey. 5 footprints have already been approved. We don't have to go through the FERC process, which really lessens the time period for getting the nuclear power plant approved. And so these are the things that we have to do. This administration and the Democratic legislature was complicit in letting Phil Murphy put everything on wind. It has failed.
John Brabnick.
The Democrats, and to be honest with you, I get along with the Democrats, but they pick politics over policy. What they do is they determine that this state is going to go 100% green. The problem is it wasn't a practical approach. I say that over and over again. They pick a political lane without using any common sense. So what did they do? They invested all of their efforts in offshore wind. Despite the legislature giving them $1 billion for Ørsted, they could not do offshore wind. Phil Murphy and the Democrats want to ban all fossil fuels. Interesting, very political, but practically it doesn't work. What we need is common sense and multi-sources of energy in this state.
Bill Spadia.
You know, it's funny to hear Jack Ciattarelli talk about his opposition to wind, knowing that the lobbying firm that has helped fuel and fund his nearly 40-year career in politics lobbies for big wind. So that's interesting. The other interesting point is nuclear. You know, Jack, I'm sure, knows that it takes 10 years to get a new nuclear reactor built and online. Now, it just so happens 10 years ago, I stood at the PSE&G plant with the 3 nuclear reactors, and I called on the governor and the then legislature, which Jack served in, when he had the power to do something, and said, guys, if we defund the expenditures on solar and wind, which are not working to supply our grid, and we invest in nuclear, we would have a governor coming into office in 2026 with a new nuclear reactor online. So that's not going to help the ratepayers now. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. Number 1, we're going to pull out of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Number 2, we are going to force the energy companies to negotiate directly with the power suppliers and cut out the middleman. Number 3, by executive order, we're going to end the electric vehicle mandate. We're going to end the energy master plan. We're going to let the market come back. Natural gas, methane, and nuclear are our future.
Time is up. Micah, follow up.
Does nuclear need to go at Oyster Creek or in Salem, or are there new spots in the state that you would consider?
There are 5 footprints already approved, Micah, down in South Jersey, so why not use one of those footprints? Mr. Spady is wrong on the timeline. The new modular nuclear reactors can come online within 6 years. Think about where we would be today if Phil Murphy hadn't bet all on wind and had put a shovel in the ground 6-7 years ago on the next nuclear reactor. The 3 we have down there provide 40% of our electricity here in the state with 0 carbon emissions. But get ready for attacks on every given issue tonight. I think it's an acknowledgement of where the polls are.
Bill Spadia. Bill Spadia, you wanted to follow up, Bill Spadia?
This from a man who spent millions of dollars trying to tear me down. Well, Jack, I'm still here. And I'll tell you something. What is really interesting is, again, he admits he was in the legislature at a time when he had the power to do something. He chose politics and lobbyists over ratepayers and real people. And I'll tell you this, we can not only get our natural gas online, we could be energy independent within 18 months to 3 years. We have to take the peaker plants, these are the combined cycle plants, and make sure that we allow them to go from being there to supply 400 megawatts at peak energy and get them full steam up to 1,300. We could be energy independent literally within a year and a half.
John Brabnick.
Well, I'm just hoping that tonight's debate doesn't turn into a Jerry Springer show again. Yeah, the bottom line is, let's respect the time clock, let's respect the candidates, and let's stay with the substance. And in the general election, none of this is going to help us. Let's concentrate on the Democratic policies that have put our state in a situation where we're unaffordable, energy costs are off the charts, and of course, we're closing prisons as opposed to putting people in prisons. Let's stay with the issues.
This is for Senator Bramnick. Higher education is already unaffordable for many New Jersey families, yet Governor Murphy's proposed state budget contains $285 million in cuts to student financial aid and colleges and universities, while further federal cuts are also likely coming for education and workforce programs. What will you do as governor to help more New Jersey families continue their kids' education?
Well, first, I won't vote for a budget that cuts higher education and then helps their friends and puts money into a Domino's club, into a lacrosse club, and $50 million into a French art museum. So this is the problem that the Democrats continue in our state. They cut important services such as higher education. That $250 million goes back in. I've never supported any of his budgets as Republican leader, and I led a caucus to make sure we had limited increases when Chris Christie was the governor. That's why experience is really important when we're talking about a budget. But no, I think they're making a big mistake cutting higher education.
Bill Spadia.
Well, there's experience, and then there is being a political insider. And my two opponents combined for 80 years as political insiders. So when you look at that and you say, okay, how are we in such a bad shape right now when these two guys have had the power to do something about it, yet they failed to act? Now, what are we going to do? We are going to cut some higher education. I'm going to start with $1 billion cut out of the Rutgers budget. It is absolutely outrageous that Rutgers University has a $5 billion budget, $1 billion coming from the taxpayers, and still one of the most expensive in-state tuitions in the entire country. What we really have to do is get into middle school and high school and start talking to kids about other careers. Why are we not talking about getting into the skilled trades? Why does every kid have to go to college and endure a six-figure debt with no prospects of jobs? We need to change education and the way we think.
Jack Tittarelli.
The reason why Bill doesn't meet his own definition of insider is because he's lost every election he's ever won. So,
how about those last two races for governor,
Bill
Jack?
Murphy's budget includes $20 million in cuts to community colleges, which I believe offer the best value proposition it is. So under Governor Cettarelli, you're not going to see cuts, particularly to community college funding. I think there's something wrong with the cost structure of higher ed in New Jersey. I've had two of my four children that went out of state to college. One went to West Virginia, paid out of state tuition. One went to the University of Minnesota, paid out of state tuition. Both ended up paying less on an annual basis than what it would have cost to go to Rutgers with in-state tuition. So we have a new Rutgers president. I'm going to work very, very closely with our university colleges and presidents to get their cost structure under control. But we're going to make sure that higher ed is attainable for each and every New Jerseyan.
Since I was attacked as an insider, let me respond. An insider is someone with experience. Now, when you're a radio host, you just hang up on the person you disagree with. When you represent people, you listen to all your constituents. That's why I continue to win in a district with 7,000 more Democrats, because I listen. I can't cut off the person calling me on the phone. I'm not sure a radio host is actually real experience for running the state of New Jersey. It's real experience for selling stuff, but it ain't terribly good to be the governor of the state of New Jersey.
30 seconds, Bill Spadia.
It's a silly comment. I'm not going to respond.
Back to Micah.
Okay. You just mentioned, Assemblyman, the net migration out of the state for college. Do we run the risk, if all those kids leave, that they're not coming back?
We do. In fact, New Jersey leads the nation. When our K through 12 students go out of state to college, New Jersey leads the nation in the fewest that come back. People will go where they can achieve their American dream. I'd like to do what Missouri did. What Missouri did is if you went to a Missouri state college, paid out-of-state tuition, if you had 3 years of W-2 wages after graduation, 3 years of W-2 wages from a Missouri employer, they gave you a refund for the difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. For our New Jerseyans, I'd like to make your first 2 years of W-2 earnings after high school or college tax-free. These are some of the things that we can do to get people back here in this state. If we don't do that, the future doesn't look good in terms of economic vitality.
Bill Spadia.
Jack's got a lot of ideas on giving away money. As a matter of fact, it was Jack's idea, and he supported and maybe still supports taxpayer-funded in-state tuition for illegal aliens. That ends on day one when I end the sanctuary state. So very interesting that we're talking about whether people stay here. You know, there was a great idea proposed in New York by Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo. You know, sometimes Democrats have an idea or two that you can look at, that if you invest in someone's higher education and then require a certain number of years for them to work and pay taxes in the state, that would be a return on investment instead of a giveaway. Jack is fond of giving away money because this is what insiders do.
John Bramnick.
People leave the state for a number of reasons and don't come back. Students are just part of the people exiting the state. They exit the state and don't come back because they can't afford to come back to the state. That's why you need a Republican governor. The out-of-control spending, the high property taxes, the environment for business is all creating a situation where people can't come back to the state because they can't afford it. That's students, and that's seniors, and that's working people. So what we want to do is make sure it's affordable for everyone, and maybe those students will come back to New Jersey.
We're going to move on to our next question with Matt Rooney.
For this question, we'll start with Mr. Spadia. New Jersey's average property tax bill surpassed $10,000 for the first time in 2024. One of the Democrats running for governor, Josh Gottheimer, is promising a 15% property tax cut. Can you promise us a specific cut in your first term? And if so, how will you pay for it without the sort of draconian suburban school aid cuts we've seen under Governor Phil Murphy?
Well, there really is no funding formula. With the S2, that implies that there is some math that goes into this. Instead, we have seen arbitrary political action taken against our small towns. Now, that said, no one can promise a certain percentage of cut because you don't know what the costs are going to be when you get in. Here's what I'm going to do on day one. We're going to take over the failed city school districts. We're going to look at the $1.6 billion that is being spent in Newark City schools with 28,000 kids. 4,000 of those kids are on a list to get into a charter school. Now, we all know public school average cost $23,000. Charter school average cost $13,000. We need to have the state take over those boards of ed to push school choice. We eventually need education savings accounts, but I will directly pass the savings from Newark, Camden, Trenton, Irvington, Patterson back to the towns that have lost funding.
Jack Chiarelli, you're next.
First, before Mr. Spadia spoke about policy positions with regard to the children of people who are illegally, the same people that President Trump offered DACA to, he's on record as offering amnesty and a pathway to citizenship to people that are here illegally. If he were to do that as governor, I wonder if he'd offer them in-state tuition. Matt, we need a new school funding formula. The current formula, S2, is nefarious, it's arbitrary. I believe it violates the Equal Benefit Clause of our state constitution that says no community is supposed to suffer at the expense of another. Here's the argument I'll make before the Supreme Court on day one. You cannot justify to me why some districts have a cost per pupil of $37,000 per pupil when the average is $16,000 per pupil. It's no accident that the districts that have the highest cost per pupil are the ones that get the greatest amount of state aid. That is going to be fixed, and it will, under my new school funding formula.
Quickly to Bill Spadia, then
Yeah,
John Bramnick, because he was a...
I heard an attack, which I'm going to ignore because it's a total lie. But what I didn't hear are details about policy. And again, what you're going to get from me, which is why I'm so happy about this format, details. We are going to talk about the executive orders that need to be written. You're not going to get anything done by waiting for the legislature or waiting for the courts. You've got to act and use the same power that Governor Murphy showed us the governor of New Jersey has during COVID. We just have to use it to restore parental rights, lower our property taxes, fix our roads, and restore integrity to government through NJ Doge.
Now on to John Bramnick.
I'm going to put Josh on my tax reduction team. He can serve with Houdini and other people make stuff up, right? Look, Josh keeps saying that, and I've been serving the legislature and as the leader for 10 years. He's talking nuts. What we did was practical. With Chris Christie, we put a 2% cap on local spending. Of course, we didn't do that for the state, and we should have before Phil Murphy became governor. So the real answer to Josh is, it's very interesting. You just can't do it. It's a nice soundbite, but you can't do it. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised the other Democrats haven't called him out. Well, that's shocking to me. But if he's got a plan, I'll listen to him.
So everything that I've heard from you on this question was that you have certain reforms you want to implement, which you hope will eventually bring down property taxes. But people in the state are suffering now. Can any of you name any specific programs or policies you can enact, with or without a legislature, because you may have a Democrat legislature, to bring down property taxes, just not have them increase?
State New Jersey, which is partially funded, does that. I mean, it was kind of gimmicky. They put it in 3 years ago and said they're going to do it this year. I'm not going to vote against it. They've tried to put some money away, which cuts property taxes in half for people earning less than $500,000. So that's a quick gimmick. It doesn't work long term. What we really, and it's short term. The only way you fix it short term, increase the senior property freeze, continue to fund Stay New Jersey, but nothing's happening overnight. Long term, we should have homesteading like they have in Florida, which means your property tax is capped until you resell that house to a family that are two working people. But short term, Houdini.
Matt, if we have a more equitable distribution of the $15 billion in state aid, we lower property taxes. And so I believe the state needs to take over the cost of special ed and then provide a formula that's simply this. Every district gets X for every English language learner and Y for every English speaking student and Y for every English language learner. But in addition, specific to your question, I believe we should freeze property taxes once people hit age 70. I think we should make all retirement income tax-free. Let's hope the president is successful in restoring, at least in whole or in part, the SALT deduction. Let's make the first 5 years of home ownership for first-time home buyers capped at 1% of the assessed value of home so they can get up on their feet. Those are some of the things that we can do. Never taxing someone because they did a home improvement. I think it's criminal that if you do a home improvement, you get reassessed and pay more property taxes. We'll put a moratorium on that under Governor Chitterelli.
Bill Spadia.
Well, it's very easy to stand up here and hear these guys talk about lowering taxes, neither talk about how we actually cut spending. But Matt, to your question, I gave you a very specific way that we're going to do it by forcing school choice in our cities. But it really is beyond that, because it's interesting that Jack will tell you he's going to lower taxes, yet in the assembly he voted to increase the sales tax, he voted to increase the gas tax, he voted to increase your income tax. So I don't know how you run away from a record of tax increases, both these guys voting with the Democrats. You know, we heard it earlier, it's about winning, it is about saving New Jersey. That's what this is about. And your job as voters is to pick the strongest, most principled person up here who has the ability to actually take this and take the Democrats to task. And the only way to do it is to have a strong executive willing to take all the political hits and use the executive order to turn this around.
David Wildstein is with our next question.
Thank you. On Sunday, I asked the 5 Democratic candidates for governor standing on the same stage that you are now to identify just one state budget line item that they would cut that is costing the state $100 million a year or more out of a $58 billion budget. None of them would. Will one of you? And I'll start with Assemblyman Chitterelli.
David, is the question specific to what
Specific.
is safe?
Give me one program, one line item in the state budget worth $100 million or more that you could just cut out right now.
That we won't cut out or will cut out?
You will cut out. You will cut out.
Listen,
David, my voice cuts out.
The budget is up $22 billion since Chris Christie's last. There is bloat and inefficiency and I believe waste all throughout the budget. If you're asking me if someone were to ask me what's safe, we certainly need to make sure we're providing funding for those people that suffer from intellectual disabilities. I mean, those are people that we need to make sure they're our most vulnerable population. We need to take care of them. But we're going to look at cuts all across the board throughout this entire budget. I remember when people hailed Phil Murphy's 4th budget because it was the first time that he had made a full pension payment. That budget, his 4th, was $45 billion. That's $13 billion less than it is today. But with regard to these accusations of me raising taxes, let's go back to the videotape. This is a guy that recommended an $800 million increase in the sales tax and raising tolls on the Atlantic City Expressway to $8 per car.
So here's the problem that he doesn't understand. Well, I'm going to respond to that.
No, if we're going to do that, then you want everybody to jump in? Or If everybody wants to jump in, I'm happy to jump in. But if we're going to keep in order.
John Bramnick's next,
Thank
and Bill
you.
Spadia.
Sure.
You asked a
Got it.
specific question. If you look at the budget from last year, right before we passed it, there was $17 million that went to non-specified property acquisitions in Middlesex County. Similar type of non-specified work in Camden County. There were money, they went into golf courses. Specifically, there's $100 million of actually things in the budget that we don't even know where they're going. That's pretty easy to get to that quickly.
So here's one good thing that a radio host brings to the table. I actually know how to listen, and I've been listening for 10 years. And the question was, what specifically would you cut? So I would start with the $193 million that is budgeted for a new stadium in Middlesex County. Don't know why we need that. Don't know why the taxpayers in all other 20 counties are paying for that. So that would be number one. But, it's important to note that Jack Ciattarelli may not understand the difference between a talk show host who talks and listens and interacts and sometimes throws out controversial subjects to get a conversation going, and a legislator who actually voted to raise taxes. And by the way, it was Assembly Bill 2003 in 2012. One of your first votes in the Assembly, actually, to raise taxes. That's the real legacy of this almost Democrat.
Laura, the first job of any candidate and elected official is to listen. To listen is to affirm the dignity of someone else who may oppose you. To listen is to affirm respect for the person who may oppose you. One thing he has never done in his 10 years on the radio is listen. He has hung up on people that had a contrary position. He has talked over people that disagree with him, and he's cut them off if they were Jack Ciattarelli supporters.
And I would pick on Bill Spadia's record, but he doesn't have one, so there's really nothing to really.
Yeah. Well, let me stay with you, Senator Bramnick.
That was a good line.
I'm going to stay with you, Senator Bramnick. So $58 billion proposed budget. We don't know yet what it's going to be. Give me a range. Where should the budget for the state of New Jersey be at? What amount do you think is the right number?
I don't have a global number, but I can tell you it should be at least $1 billion short of what it's been from last year, because those are all port projects. The year before, $500 million. So if you add up all of those port projects that go into specific districts, in order really to get votes to pass the budget, it's probably $5 billion over 7 years. So, and I've told the Democrats, and they know that. I said, when I'm governor, I'm going to tell you, there's no pork, man. Simple as that. You want to shut down the government? That's fine. Unless you stand up and you say, this party is over, that's where we're going to get the cuts.
David, I would say this, and answer your question this way. John Corzine's second to last budget 18 years ago was $36 billion. His last budget 17 years ago was $35 billion. That wasn't all of a sudden John being a fiscal conservative. That was the beginning of the Great Recession. Chris Christie's first budget 16 years ago was $29 billion. $6 billion less. That's a 15% decrease. $6 billion less than John Corzine's last. We balanced that budget without raising taxes a penny or borrowing a dime. Nobody died. It was tough. We got through it. Now we've raised this budget $22 billion in 8 years' time. Don't tell me, not you personally, but no one's going to tell me there isn't room for cuts. We did it back in 2011 when we had to deal with the Great Recession. We got to deal with it now because we've got an affordability crisis in this state.
Bill Spadia.
Jack's going to have to check with his lobbyist before he'll give you a specific answer on what he'll actually cut. But yes, the $750 million in Christmas tree projects, absolutely cut. We need to cut the $1 billion out of Rutgers. We need to end illegal immigration, work with Tom Homan, ICE, and President Trump, and that will directly impact the cost for our schools, et cetera. But beyond that, we have a crisis of fraud. We know this. We know, just looking at what Elon Musk is doing with Doge, finding people who are 165 years old who are collecting a Social Security check. How many pensioners have moved out of state and died 10 years ago and are still getting money from New Jersey taxpayers? So we need to reevaluate where we are. The specific number, I believe we can get down to $46 billion in the very first budget. That'll be a cut of about $12.5 billion.
Joey Fox is next with our next question. We're going to ask the audience to please refrain from speaking, and if you don't refrain, we're going to have you escorted out. Our next question comes from Joey Fox. If we can get security to have our this individual escorted out, please. All right, we're going to continue on with our debate in just a moment.
So the interim question is, who loves Jersey, guys, right? You gotta love Jersey?
Right.
Yeah.
She loves Jersey. She's just mad.
I should have brought my daughter for a musical interlude. Okay, we apologize to our viewing audience for that interruption, but we're going to continue on with our questions right now as soon as security gets this individual out.
You know what Michael
room.
Aaron said? New Jersey politics never disappoints,
It's
right?
never a dull moment. Never a dull moment.
John, you wanted a show. You know.
I'm used to hecklers at the comedy clubs.
All right.
Where'd she learn how to whisper in a helicopter?
It's a bit of a.
Now you three seem very civil.
All right, now we're going to move on. Joey Fox has our next question.
So, Mr. Spadia, Republicans in Washington are debating a Medicaid plan that could result in as many as 360,000 New Jerseyans losing Medicaid coverage. As you sort of think about your broader affordability agenda for New Jersey, how would that account for potential reductions in federal health care funding and more uninsured New Jerseyans?
Well, first of all, at the federal level, we're spending too much as it is because you've got, and remember, New Jersey taxpayers are federal taxpayers. So we're all paying into a system that isn't working. And again, when it comes to Medicaid, I look at the $6.2 billion that New Jerseyans are paying for our share of Medicaid and have to wonder how many of the illegals that my opponent wanted to give a driver's license to are taking advantage of walking into an emergency room and using that as their primary care physician. So the reality is we need to cut the waste and the fraud and the abuse. By ending the sanctuary state, I believe we can save the taxpayers of the state about $1.5 billion because we owe it to our disabled community. We owe it to the folks that are suffering from long-term illnesses. The idea that government is throwing money at nearly 1 million illegals in this state is outrageous because you've got families with children with disabilities that are waiting sometimes 9 months to a year to get proper funding, to get medical care, to see a specialist. It is absolutely unacceptable. So I look at cuts as a drive toward efficiency, but not one person who is in need will go without help.
John Bramnick.
Well, I hear waste, fraud, and abuse. I like the concept, but you have to actually look closely at every cut. I think sometimes we cut across the board without actually doing the forensic audit. And any business, they don't just cut across the board. What they do is they look at the programs that are successful, they study the programs, and then they cut. What's happening, in my judgment, in Washington, it seems as if it's happening awfully quickly. If there's a sit down and we can go over the Medicaid money in New Jersey, that makes sense. But to cut it, to be honest with you, I hope the Republicans in Washington stand up, support New Jersey, and not make those cuts.
Jack Chitterelli.
I think Bill is referring to the illegals that he wanted to offer a pathway to citizenship and amnesty to. But the best way to solve Medicaid is to prevent waste, fraud in Medicaid. And it's a multi-billion-dollar program. So I think that the president is right in trying to hit the reset button in eliminating waste and fraud. Here in New Jersey, Phil Murphy has given Medicaid automatically to anyone who comes here illegally. I don't think that's right. I think it's reasonable to expect to look every 6 months whether or not able-bodied people are eligible to get off of Medicaid by working. Also in New Jersey, a married couple with 2 children, up to $114,000 a year in family income is eligible for Medicaid. I think that's a bit too generous. I'm not saying that $114,000 a year isn't lower middle class in New Jersey, but those are some of the cases in which I think we've been too generous. But the best way to save Medicaid is by eliminating the fraud in the Medicaid system.
So I mean, Mr. Bramnick brought up the idea that, you know, he thinks that maybe Republicans in Washington are being too hasty or going sort of too fast with some of these cuts. I'm curious to ask both of you, Mr. Spadea and Mr. Chitterelli. I'll start with you, Mr. Chitterelli, for this. You're pitching yourself as a Trump defender, generally, you know, sort of a Trump ally in New Jersey. What do you do if you're governor and Trump makes cuts in Washington, or Republicans make cuts in Washington that impact your ability to generally deliver for New Jerseyans? Not just specifically on Medicaid, but on any of these programs.
Did
How
not
do
the
you
recession
respond?
back in 2011 impact our ability to do this and do that, but yet we met that challenge. And I believe we can meet this challenge. But the first job of any governor is to provide for the public health and safety. And that means taking care of our most vulnerable people, whether it's people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people on Medicaid. We will find a way. Every governor deals with a new set of priorities given on the circumstances at that time. I'm confident our Governor Chitterelli will meet that challenge.
Just want to say one thing.
Can I let Mr. Spadea? Oh, okay.
I'm going to fight for New Jersey, even if it means disagreeing with Washington Republicans. New Jersey's got to come first. It's simple as that. You have to stand up. You have to stand up for this state if you're the governor, period. You can't follow one voice. You have to listen to the voices of New Jersey residents.
Mr. Spadea, would you like to?
Well, at least Senator Bramnick answered the question. I'm not so sure what Jack did except dance around because he's so scared now to oppose anything Donald Trump says because he's got the endorsement he's got to protect. Here's the reality. You can check any number of Jack's mailers or commercials. I have had a public career of never being afraid to disagree with those in power. I have absolutely disagreed with President Trump on multiple occasions. Just ask this guy. And you know what? Disagreement is okay. You have to protect this state. Now, I'll give you a recent example happened today. The Trump administration has now dropped the objection for Empire to go and build these wind turbines off our coast. Absolutely outrageous. We will take that to court. We will fight it every step of the way. We're not going to build wind turbines off the coast of New Jersey. And I don't have to answer to a bunch of lobbyists like he does who are supporting these same companies.
Okay, we're going to go back to Micah Rasmussen for our next question.
This is a question for Senator Bramnick. President Trump is considering a baby bonus, and Transportation Secretary Duffy has ordered his department to prioritize funding for communities that have higher birth and marriage rates. With population growth in New Jersey that's about a third of the fastest growing states, is this a need in New Jersey? And if so, what should we be doing?
A baby bonus? I think people are good at having babies without getting a bonus. They know how to do it. Like, no, I don't believe in a baby bonus. If we're the party of limited government, that doesn't sound like a Republican proposition to me.
Jack Chitterelli.
I get the sense you disagree with the president's decision to endorse me. I get the sense you disagree with him on that, too. But
I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I make no bones about that. You know
Well,
what?
no,
But again,
yeah.
he endorsed a poll, not a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Chitterelli, you still have 30 seconds.
More spin from the radio host. Listen, I'm not familiar, Mika, with this program. I would hope that it's needs-based, but we know how expensive it is, particularly in New Jersey, to raise a family. So if they're thinking about somehow, some way, providing additional support, like we do with the child care tax credit and the like, let's have at it.
Bill Spadea.
I love this idea. We ought to be encouraging families. Part of the problem we have in a lot of our cities is that the families have been broken down. Any incentive that can be to make sure that mom and dad are empowered. Remember, I'm the only guy on this stage that outright stood up and defended parental rights when they came after us, when these guys came after it. So I support anything that is going to reinforce the nuclear family because that is how we fix our society.
Okay.
Micah has another question.
So on car insurance, another affordability issue, Senator Bramnick, you and Senate President Scutari were the authors of a law that requires more liability insurance, resulting in higher car insurance bills for more than 1 million New Jersey drivers. Is this an example that sometimes affordability can't be the only consideration for those who represent us?
For 3 decades, the auto insurance companies had a cap no matter what the injury was, someone was hurt. And after 3 decades, I joined with the Senate president to increase that cap so the victim of an automobile accident could be somewhat compensated. The insurance companies are the strongest lobby in the state of New Jersey. And they're the toughest to actually get paid from. So I have fought my whole life to make sure that consumers are fairly treated by insurance companies. This was just one of the many bills where I stand up for consumers. There are going to be people on this stage who spend all their time defending insurance companies. If you've submitted a health claim to your insurance company and you get that piece of paper that said the bill was $200 and you got $9.99, that's going to end when I'm governor. I'm telling you right now. We're going to look at these insurance companies and you're going to be compensated when you go to the doctor.
Bill Spady, you're next.
Well, first of all, that bill not only raised the rates for consumers, but it enriched the trial attorneys. So we're not going to work to enrich the trial attorneys for sure. Number two, when we're talking about affordability, we need more competition when it comes to insurance, whether we're talking about health insurance or auto insurance. Competition will bring prices down. I don't know if my two opponents have agreed to this pledge, but I can tell you that I was the first one to do it, that we are not going to allow the insurance companies to discriminate against people that don't have a college degree. Right now, they can charge you more if you don't have a college degree. I think that's outrageous. That's going to be an executive order on day one.
Jack Chitterelli.
I can't help but the bill was talking a few moments ago about parental rights. I don't know how you say you support parental rights or bodily autonomy. We can go through the videotape. There's another instance where you're saying if people don't get a flu vaccine, they should be charged more by their health insurance company. So,
you know, I'm the only one that's committed to eliminating the flu vaccine, right? You know that, right,
yeah.
Jack?
We're not on the radio, Bill. You can't talk over people. Mike. Across the board, Mike, insurances across the board in New Jersey are out of control. Health insurance is up, property and casualty, flood insurance. My flood insurance at the Jersey Shore back in 20 years ago was $600 a year. It's up to $4,000 a year. I buy private health insurance. I'm not eligible for Medicare yet, but I am retired. It just went up another $400 a year. That's almost $400 a month. That's another $5,000 a year. I like to look at what other states are doing. I do agree with Bill on the need for more competition. And more insurance companies have left our state because it's not a great place to do business. We got to make sure it is. But we need more competition, and we need to look at reforms. What are other states doing to get their insurance costs under control? Because it's breaking the back of everyday New Jerseyans.
All right, we are going to take a quick commercial break before diving into our next topic, which is education. We want you to stay with us as we continue the New Jersey gubernatorial primary debate presented by Uber, live from the Donald M. Payne Senior School of Technology in Newark. Stay with us.
Everything is getting more expensive. Rent, groceries, insurance. Uber is essential to my passengers. Insurance has gone up. This is hard for people.
Join our fight to protect your access to affordable rides.
If you have chronic joint or back pain, this is probably where you spend your time. Might we suggest a better destination that's close to home? RWJ Barnabas Health, where orthopedic surgeons designed the surgical implants that are now used around the world, and where you'll be cared for by the same doctors that treat professional athletes and rising stars. Get back to what you've been missing. Orthopedic care. Do it right. Here, RWJ Barnabas Health.
Today, 52 million Americans own cryptocurrency.
We are the pioneers,
the visionaries,
the builders of a growing movement
with the power to democratize the old economic models
and create a world economy of the people,
for the people,
and by the people.
We are crypto.
This is the moment for us to make our voices heard.
We are the catalyst that will create a new world.
With our numbers,
with our voices,
with our votes.
We are crypto.
Karen's about to retire. Here's what's going into her retirement.
There's us. She raised us on our own.
10 years as my roller derby wife.
Three schools she's opened.
She's a mother.
I think we turned out all right.
She's a friend.
Our mothers could tell stories.
She's a teacher.
She may be retiring, but she's not done.
I'm never gonna stop. Retirement is the sum of your life's work. Now what? Get income for life and protect your life's work with Prudential.
Every child deserves a great public school that meets their needs. That's why many families take advantage of charter schools as an option that's free, public, and open to all. See what's possible. Find a charter school near you.
Hello, I'm Ferlanda Fox-Nixon, President and CEO of NRBP, the premier chamber of commerce serving the greater Newark region. Our mission is to strengthen the region's business community through connections, resources, and advocacy. From member-exclusive opportunities to public events and more, NRBP helps businesses of all sizes grow, engage, and succeed. Join us at NRBP, where business meets opportunity.
Welcome back. We are live at the Donald M. Payne Senior School of Technology in Newark with the New Jersey Gubernatorial primary debate presented by Uber. I'm Laura Jones. A few reminders. Again, when we have our opening question, we're going to have the candidate will have 1 minute to respond and the other candidates get 45 seconds. If there's more or an attack, we give an extra 30 seconds. Now, we are on the topic of education for this next segment. David Wildstein, you're going to take the lead right now.
Thanks. Assemblyman Chitterelli, I'll start with you. All three of you basically agree that parents and local school boards, not the state, ought to make key decisions regarding curriculum. All of you back a voucher system that would allow parents to send their kids to a different school. What's your understanding of how much that would cost, and how will you pay for that?
How much, I'm sorry, David, what would cost?
How much would the voucher system cost?
David, we spend $15 billion on education. I think that's more on a cost per pupil basis than any other state in the country. Income tax is dedicated to state school aid. And you've heard me say before that in some districts we're spending $37,000 per student, despite the fact that there are subpar outcomes in those districts. So here in New Jersey under Phil Murphy, we reward failure and we punish success. We see the cuts in Toms River, we see it in Jackson, we see it across the state. So I think we need a more equitable distribution of state aid, and I think that we need to have every district within a reasonable range of somewhere between $13,000 and $18,000 per pupil. Why the range? Well, things are a little less expensive maybe in Salem than they are in Bergen County. But we got to get back to investing that money the right way, and the way that we do that is by emphasizing critical life skills and providing vocational training, all with an age-appropriate curriculum. We are graduating illiterate children, and so we got to get back to the basics with our public school curriculum.
Bill Spadia.
So it will require action, and the action the governor can take is through executive order and the executive powers, and the first thing we need to do is take those 4,000 kids in Newark. I mean, we can call it subpar. The real reason, it's a disaster. 9 out of 10 kids in Newark can't function at grade level, can't perform at grade level. 9 out of 10 can't do math at grade level. That's a disaster for those 28,000 kids. The way we lower our costs is we need school choice. But to your point, David, just one tweak. I think a straight voucher system where people can trade different public schools is not going to work here. We need parental choice in education where your money follows the student. But that means we empower homeschoolers, micro schools, charter schools, parochial schools, religious institutions. We need to allow parents to make that choice and follow their kids. And what that will do, if you look at the cost, your average parochial school about $8,000, your average charter school $13,000, average public about $23,000, and the number keeps going up. Once we get school choice, you're going to lower the amount that we're going to need to spend on education.
Stop time over John Bramnick.
So I have visited the charter schools, magnificent, well run. So if you're going to take money and put it into the voucher program, it's going to come out of the public school education budget. So it's basically transferring money from one pool to the other. So I don't see a significant increase in spending in the education budget, but absolutely promoting these schools that have been incredibly successful. Many of the urban centers really, really support those schools, and I'd be a big supporter of just transferring the money when you have less students in one school and more students in a charter school.
Okay, do a follow-up. I'm going to start. Let me start with Mr. Spadia, and I'll go right down the line. Students under your proposals can change schools under a voucher system. Teachers can't easily transfer their tenure to another school if they decide that they wanted to move, a good teacher wanting to go to a different school system. If a teacher disagrees with the philosophy of a school system and they'd like to move to a different district, should their tenure be portable?
It's a good question. I would say it would depend. So first of all, we're going to eliminate 5756, which has put the schools in between parents and kids. There's going to be a certain limit to where a teacher can object. We're not going to tolerate librarians or teachers keeping the welfare of a child away from parents. We're not going to tolerate teachers or administrators or librarians from pushing what is pornography in our school libraries. All of that's going to be gone. I would have no issue, however, once we fix the overall problem of a teacher transferring to another school and keeping their tenure. Well, look, our teachers are putting $100 out of their pockets every week for school supplies. We've got a broken system that has put a burden on teachers that don't want to co-parent. They just want to teach. We need to change how we deliver education, and that starts with empowering our teachers.
Jack Chitterelli, you're next.
David, where a school system is failing, students have to have a choice, and the choice is charter schools and a voucher program, very much like we see in Florida. We have to have that where a school system is failing. As for the teachers, I mean, right now across the state of New Jersey, we have a teacher shortage. So I don't see there being much limited opportunity for teachers to move to a different district if they want to. Every superintendent I speak to across the state, there's a shortage of teachers. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we've made the profession a whole lot less enjoyable for a lot of people because of what we're teaching in our schools and the pressures there are with regard to the public school curriculum. You know, I've spoken to young teachers that say, I went to school to teach math. Can I just teach math, please? So I don't know how much limiting there is with regard to teachers moving because of the teacher shortage that we have right now.
As a proud graduate of Plainfield High School and the Plainfield public system, I support transferring tenure. If you earn tenure, I don't think it makes any difference what school you're at. I taught for 4 years. When you stand up in front of a class and you use all of that energy, it is a very difficult job, and we're having a tough time getting teachers. We need to pay teachers. These teachers are the ones who are talking to our children. I'm a big supporter of teachers, and it's a really tough job. So let's help those teachers. It means tenure transfer. It means more money. We must support our teachers. And let them teach, too. Stop all the mandates from Trenton. Let them teach. And if they're doing a good job, leave them alone.
David, a follow-up.
So we are in this cathedral of a school, the state-of-the-art Essex County Donald Payne School of Technology, 7 years old, paid for by the state. Mr. Spady, I'll start with you. How do we make it so that all students in New Jersey could go to a school of this caliber?
Well, first of all, we have to focus on education and not the school buildings. This is a beautiful building, and I wonder how much was spent on one of the nicest parking garages that I've seen, nicer than most colleges. I'm not so sure we are spending the money in the right way. Actually, I'll say that I am sure. We ought to be paying our teachers more and empowering them to educate math and reading and history, get rid of the wokeism. We're going to end critical race theory. We're going to end DEI. We're going to end all of that in our schools, and I'm going to do it by firing the 8 members of the State Board of Education who are in an expired term right now, replace them with Board of Ed members who are pro-parental rights, pro-student, pro-education.
We're going to Jack Chitterelli next.
David, as a father of 4, one of which went into the trades, I will tell you we need more vocational training opportunities and we need more emphasis on the trades. Not all kids want or need to go to college. So I would hope that every county would commit itself to providing facilities such as this one, but also promoting it so that children know they have an option once they get to high school. In Europe, the model is you sit down with the student, the family, the guidance counselors do near the end of 8th grade and find out what the goal is for that particular student. And if they know then and there they're not going to be going to college, they're on a vocational track all through high school. And I tease superintendents and school principals all the time. Just once I want to show up to a high school graduation and there's 2 valedictorians. The one that's going to the Ivy League tomorrow, but the one that's also starting as a $50,000 electrician. Why don't we celebrate that kid? We ought to. And the great thing about going to the trades, you can own the business one day. So we need this kind of approach in our educational system, and we will under Governor Chitterelli.
I think the question was, how did this come about? Joe D. Joe D. Joe D, as an Essex County leader, has been able to lobby state government, and he's done a good job. You know, part of the job of the local representative and the county executive is to fight for their district. This guy fights hard. That's how it happened. And that's why you have to understand that if you're going to do things statewide, that you have to work with everybody. I'll tell you something. I'll use Joe D as a helpful advocate for these kind of centers all over the state. You don't just use Republican talking points. You use things that work. And if this works here and it's really a successful school, hey, Joe D's a guy I'm talking to.
Thank you. I'll stick with you, Senator Bramnick. So,
thank you.
Lots of politicians on both sides of the aisle, especially when they're on the campaign trail, they say that Jersey's got the best schools in America. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree. I think if we look at test scores around the country, and if we look at the facilities in hopefully most of our towns, I think we have some of the best teachers. We obviously have some great students, and we have a lot of successful stories out of our public schools. And I think there are many people who move to New Jersey, and they move to New Jersey because they think it's a great place for education. And I think that the schools that are doing well, the competition to live in that community is really strong. We just need to spread the wealth. We need to make every school in this state a school that breeds success.
Jack Ciarelli, then.
David, I really wish we would stop saying that. We've got some phenomenal pockets of success throughout New Jersey, but if you take out the top 10%, the high-performing school districts which skew the results, we're not doing well at all. In fact, on the recent national report card, we slipped from 2 to 12. I think a lot of it has to do with the learning loss that took place over the course of the pandemic, 2 years worth. We haven't seen summer enrichment programs, we haven't seen after-school programs, and we haven't seen something I've called for that Louisiana did. While we slipped from 2 to 12 on the national report card, Louisiana went from 48 to 32 with a high impact curriculum, meaning if any child is behind grade level in reading, writing, math, that's all that student concentrates on for the next 1, 2, or 3 market periods to get them up to speed, because the data is clear. If you don't do that by 8th grade, that child will be unemployed the rest of their lives.
We've got the most expensive schools in the country, that's for sure. That's number one. And number two, unfortunately, if we had the best schools, maybe it wouldn't, cost as much as it's costing, and we wouldn't have a teacher shortage. The challenge is we've got a school system that focuses on pronouns and propaganda instead of math and reading and history. So we need to change the way the curriculum is written and delivered to our students. But look, I am a proud graduate of Cherry Hill High School East. I'm a South Jersey guy originally. Jody and I moved to Princeton. Well, one reason was the schools were so good. Sadly, we have now seen not just the left-wing wokeism propaganda infiltrate our schools, but we've seen a removal of authority where police officers are no longer able to stop a kid who's drinking or using drugs and report them to the parents. So we've got a comprehensive problem. I don't think we should rate our schools on test scores. We ought to rate our schools on the number of kids when they graduate, how many went to college, how many got a job, how many went into the military. If we start rating them differently, we can get back to number one.
Joey Fox has the next question.
When Democrats were here on this stage 2 nights ago, one thing that they talked about a lot in terms of reducing costs is shared services, is regional school districts, is other forms of consolidation like that. Mr. Ciarelli, do you agree that that should be a focus on reducing costs?
We have 564 towns. We have 600 school districts. There's no state in the country that has that many governmental jurisdictions. And certainly it's one of the reasons why property taxes are high. But the primary reason why property taxes are high is because of the way we distribute $15 billion in state aid to our schools. 50% of that aid goes to 24 districts. I don't think that's fair. It results in a cost per pupil that's off the charts. Again, as I said earlier, you're not going to justify to me why some districts have a cost per pupil of $35,000 to $40,000 when the state average is somewhere around $15,000 or $16,000 per student. So as governor, if people at the local level want to regionalize or want to consolidate, as Princeton Borough and Princeton Township did when I represented them in the state legislature, I will do everything in my power to incentivize them to go through with the plan. And we did just that for Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. We paid for, the state did, all the one-time upfront costs that are associated with the regionalization consolidation. So can we use more regionalization consolidation? Yes, but that is a local decision. We are a home rule state.
Jack loves consolidation. I'm old enough to remember when Jack Ciarelli tried to consolidate the police departments in Somerset County. Perhaps that's why you're not that popular in Somerset County these days, Jack, because the police chiefs and the officers rejected that plan, knowing it would jeopardize and compromise public safety. Now, I can tell you this. You mentioned Princeton Township, Princeton Borough. I was one of the very few Republicans to vote no on that consolidation. Why? Because I said, guys, you don't understand the hidden fees here. Your taxes will go up. We consolidated. What happened? Every year since, my property taxes have gone up. So it did not have the intended impact. This is the problem with politicians, where they talk a good game and throw out a talking point that makes sense, but then when you look at the results, we're paying more every single year. We're not going to force any district to consolidate.
Shared service is a great idea. But you better be really careful. When John Corzine wanted to go to county schools, you want to move the Board of Education from your town to the county seat. Well, let me tell you, the farther that government is away from you, the less voice you have. I actually have a bill that the public should speak down in the legislature. How are you going to reach your assemblyman or senator? You're not permitted to do that. You have to go to the county to talk about your child's welfare in a school. I love the fact that local parents are involved in local education and on their local board of education. Knowing that, we also know that shared services make some sense. But there is a real threat to move the people who run a school far away from the students and the parents. Big mistake.
Joe, if I may, real quick, let me say this. I've yet to see, and I've served as a county commissioner, and I've been involved with what goes on here in New Jersey, and I've yet to see the real value in the county superintendent and the county superintendent's office. So that's something that's going to be under serious consideration under my governorship, whether or not that is worthy to continue. I don't see the value in the county superintendents.
Micah.
Senator Brownback, you've talked about segregation and the potential settlement of the state lawsuit. But that's not something that state officials may get discretion on, right? If the court comes down and if the court says our schools have to be desegregated, what are you going to do?
Well, they've already said in the Latino Network case that our schools are segregated. That decision's been made. Now, and this is something that's really under the radar, the state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy's administration, is trying to negotiate with the plaintiffs in that case to determine how do we desegregate the schools. What I do say is that people who buy a house in a certain town, a block from a school, do not want next week to have that child bused 10 miles away. I will make sure, and this is a really serious priority, I want to make sure that when you pick a school district, you go to that school. This is one of the major pieces of litigation that threatens your ability to pick a school. Now, is there a way to desegregate the schools? Well, that's what's being negotiated now. But in my judgment, I put a constitutional amendment in that you have the absolute right to stay in your school, in your district, and that should be passed by the legislature. No busing 10, 15 miles away. I was bused in Plainfield, but I was bused within Plainfield to Washington School in 6th grade as part of a desegregation plan set by the United States Supreme Court. That works well. But moving children 10 or 15 miles to satisfy the Supreme Court decision, I will stand and fight that.
Jack Ciattarelli.
Mike, as governor, I will appoint conservative judges to the Superior Court and to the state Supreme Court. The next governor will have the opportunity to do 2 new state Supreme Court justices, one of which is the Chief Justice. But here and now, my job is to get our schools performing as soon as possible, because what's going on is criminal in terms of letting down these children and these families. And the way to do that is by changing the public school curriculum. The way to do that is providing school choice. In Phil Murphy's 8 years in office, nearly 8 years, he's only approved 1 charter school. Look at the success that the Chris Christie approved charters have had in places like Camden and Newark. And take into account that every time one of those charters is opening, when we have a lottery, the demand exceeds the supply. And it's heartbreaking that some people go home to a failing school system. What I can do on day one is ensure school choice with vouchers. Within year 1, we can have charter schools. We've got to get these schools performing while these things go through the courts. But what's taking place right now is terrible and not in the best interest of students or their families.
Maybe Jack has forgotten from his time in the legislature. He's not going to get a voucher program in without the legislature, and we're not going to have a Republican state Senate because they're not up until 2027. So what we're going to have to do is what I said back at the beginning of the conversation talking about affordability, and that is use the power of the executive to go in and fix our failed public schools in the cities, Newark, Patterson, Irvington, et cetera. When 9 out of 10 kids can't perform at grade level, that's a failed system. When you've got parents, 4,000 strong right now in Newark on a list to get to a charter school, it is incumbent upon the incoming governor to release those kids, let them get into the charter school. We're going to start working during the transition from November 5th through January 20th to bring in that capital investment that we need to get these charter schools going so that on day 1, on January 20th, 2026, those kids can get out of that failed school and into a school that's going to give them an education that they deserve.
I tell you, day 1 is going to be very busy because these guys were saying everything's happening day 1. I got to tell you something. That's going to be one busy day down in Trenton.
All right, we're going to go to Matt Rooney with our next question.
For this question, we'll start with Senator Bramnick. So I believe we've established tonight that the candidates on the stage are supportive of local control of K through 12 education, with parents and locally elected school boards making educational decisions for their own children. President Trump and U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon are working to abolish the Federal Department of Education down in Washington, D.C. Should New Jersey maintain its own state Department of Education?
Well, we take a look at what they're doing. Right now, unfortunately, they're setting so many mandates. They're putting handcuffs on teachers. There's so many reports that these schools have to give to the education department. Seems like a waste of time to me. Well, we go in and we see, and this is why I believe that you do a forensic audit, you do a smart audit, and I physically go down there just the way I built my law office, and I go, okay, let's see what you're doing. And if it doesn't make any sense because it's meddling in good schools, I end it. But I don't just end stuff. You know, I don't just say, oh, I'm getting rid of the State Department of Education. We'll see exactly whether they bring any positive effect to the schools. I'll keep what's good. I'll get rid of what's bad.
Jack Chitterelli, you're next.
Matt, what matters most is the teacher and the parents. Of course, the curriculum matters too, and we'll change that under Governor Chitterelli when I call for the resignation of all those that sit on the State Board of Education. But considering the fact that it's all about the teacher and the parents, are they doing their job? That's what means the most to performance academically of that student. We don't need 5,000 people in Washington, D.C. Quite frankly, I don't think we need 1,000 people in the Department of Education in the state of New Jersey. Yes, we need a curriculum, a standardized curriculum when it comes to things like reading, writing, and math. But what matters most is the parent and the teacher. That's what impacts that student most.
I support 100% President Trump's call to abolish the Federal Department of Education. Absolutely. We don't need the feds telling us how to run our education system. That said, I believe we need a very strong Department of Education in New Jersey, one that protects parental rights, one that makes sure that school choice is implemented, one that makes sure the curriculum is about actually educating a student. We need to protect parents in all school districts from the pronouns and the propaganda that is ruining our very good school system. So I want the Department of Ed to be a watchdog for education.
Laura, if I may, again, this is another contradiction. In 2023, he supported the state senator from Monmouth County, who's a Democrat, that is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, that's put in all the changes that he's now opposed to. So, you know, again, will the real Bill Spadea stand up?
Hey, you know,
Jack, you know that's a total lie. 30 seconds. Even you know that's a total lie. It is true. I am friends with Senator Vin Gopal. You know what's okay in New Jersey? To have friends who are Democrats. It's all right. Oh, man. Can you believe this guy?
John Bramnick, before we move back to...
Well, on the Judiciary Committee, I watched the appointments to the State Education Commission. And once again, what the Democrats do, they take political philosophy and make that the litmus test, as opposed to education experience. What we should do as Republicans is make sure the people we're putting on all of these education commissions or in the Department of Education are experienced in education, not in politics. And the Phil Murphy administration has concentrated on politics. That's why we're in this situation where people are very upset in terms of mandates from Trenton.
Matt Rooney has a follow-up.
Mr. Spadea mentioned pronouns and propaganda. If we do keep a Department of Education in New Jersey, what should its specific role be in the classroom?
In my judgment, the most important thing is that teachers have the ability to reach children. Every child has the ability to be successful. So the entire philosophy of my administration is, how do you reach that child? How do you make that child have confidence? How do you make that child feel good about themselves? How do you teach that child those basic skills to be successful? Everyone I know who is successful, who maybe started out with a confidence problem, had a teacher who told them, you're good, you're going to do well, you're going to be successful, and they got behind them. And that's what education is about, making children feel good about themselves and making sure there's a path to success.
Jack
Every time.
Matt, I feel very strongly there should be one standard across the state. What is aptitude? What is aptitude for reading, writing, and math for a fifth grader? for a 6th grader, for a 7th grader, for an 8th grader. And the reason why we need to do that each grade is because we need to get academically rigorous again. There was a time when we held children back. That wasn't punitive. That was in the best interest of the child. So I believe the primary objective of the State Board of Education is to determine aptitude for reading, writing, and math at every single grade level. And that should be a standard across the state. It shouldn't be less in one school district versus another.
Bill Spadia.
As I mentioned earlier, the State Board of Ed has to be a watchdog to protect parental rights. We have had a situation with the Attorney General going after parents and going after boards of ed who pushed back against parental rights. What we have to do is get an attorney general that is in place that supports parental rights, supports school choice. The state board has to be the watchdog to prevent the assault on parental rights, which we have seen now over the past 10 or 15 years. It spanned both parties, sadly.
Our next question is coming from Micah Rasmussen.
2 nights ago on this stage, and this is for Assemblyman Chitterelli, 2 nights ago on this stage, in supporting a pay raise for teachers, as you have all done tonight, Steve Sweeney said, we can't pay teachers what they're worth. With 118,000 public school teachers in New Jersey, I don't know how much more you think each teacher should be paid on average, but can we afford to pay teachers what they're worth?
Pay for teachers comes out of the local budget, Mika, and the local budget is paid for with property taxes, and we already have a property tax crisis in this state. Now, one thing I can do with a more equitable distribution of state aid to schools is give local school boards more flexibility in how it is they pay their bills and what it is they pay their teachers, but I think we need to be mindful of something. We've got a property tax crisis in this state. It's a terrible crisis. They're the highest in the nation. They're only going through the roof all the more. We particularly saw that all during the last few years with unprecedented inflation. So I think a lot of people go into that profession knowing it's not the best paying job in the world, but they do it for the love of teaching. It's a vocation. There are a whole lot of professions that are like that. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to give all teachers a $10,000 pay increase because right now they're undercompensated. If you do that, your property taxes are going through the roof. There'll be a revolt in the local communities.
Bill Spadia, you're next.
Well, first we've got to end Jack's plan to support illegals going to college on your dime. So that's number one. And once we do that and end the sanctuary state, remember there are two big burdens going on in the suburbs right now in particular, and that is high density housing, which is pushing so many new students into these suburban districts without any funding from the state. That's the big challenge. The second is we have 900,000 illegals in this state. How many of those students are driving up your local costs? So we need to solve those two problems first, and we're going to write executive orders to redefine what a affordable housing unit is, and we're going to push those units back into the cities where they ought to be and where most city mayors actually want them.
John Vernon.
Well, if the Democrats can give money to the Domino's Club, I think I can give money to teachers. And teachers should be a priority. Police and fire should be a priority. I deeply believe that we must treat these important state employees with respect and dignity, and we can take the money away from the pork and the Christmas tree items that have served so well the Democratic Party in the state of New Jersey for the last 7 years.
Mike, I don't, real quickly, I don't like state mandate and the state doesn't pay. I think one thing that we can do under Governor Chitterelli is give serious consideration to bonus pay for our best performing teachers. That's paid for by the state, not the local district. We would give them that money and then they would determine how to measure performance amongst those teachers. That's another thing that our State Board of Education can do, how do we measure performance. I like very much the notion of bonus pay for teachers based on the high performers.
Just a question, if I say Governor Chitterelli enough, from now on, I'm going to say Governor Spadia, Governor Bramnick, then we'll call it even. Okay, go ahead.
So it predated state mandate state pay, but Governor Kane did introduce the state's first minimum salary level for teachers, right? So governors can have something to do with this.
I would suggest that was a different time and place, Micah, in terms of the crisis we faced. At that particular time, it was during the Reagan era. The economy was flush. Tax revenues were coming in. State finances are very, very different in this sense. When the economy gets tight, income tax stops coming in, sales tax stops coming in, business tax stops coming in. We've got to balance the books. We're not allowed to deficit finance.
What was the question?
Whether or not there's a role for the governor in light of the fact that we've had minimum teachers' salaries before in the past.
Well, Once again, Governor Kane, who is heavily involved in education, whether it be the President Drew or before he became governor, I believe he was a history teacher, professor, he understood the importance of education. And that is the highest priority in our society, to make sure children learn. So I will do everything I can under the Governor Bramnick plan to help education.
Bill Spadea, before we move on to David, next question.
This is about priorities. It's about where the money is going, billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's being wasted on this crush of high-density housing. It's being wasted on people who are here illegally. What we need to do is empower our teachers, but first we have to think about protecting our retirees. Many teachers will tell you that one of the reasons they got into it, other than a passion for learning and students, is that they would take a little bit of a lower pay for a payout in the end with a pension. The challenge is a lot of folks will tell you now, 7 years from now, 8 years from now, 10 years from now, that teacher pension might not be funded. So what we have to do is take a page out of some successful state models across the country, Wisconsin included, and change the pension compensation as you bring in new hires. And Act 10 did this in Wisconsin. We leave our firefighters and our cops and our nurses alone, but we talk about the new hires coming into the system, put them on a defined contribution instead of a defined benefit. And by doing that, the state of Wisconsin went from a $3.6 billion deficit to a $900 million surplus in one budget year. So it can work, and I believe it can work here, and we can take the surplus and start paying teachers what they are deserving.
David Wildstein.
So I'm going to assume that all three of you believe, and I'm not going to ask this question, that the buck stops with the governor. And my question is, Rutgers University pays its football coach over $6 million a year. They pay their basketball coach over $4 million a year. New Jersey pays its CEO of New Jersey Transit less than that. Will you allow that to continue? What will you do about salaries in college sports as it relates to others? And I'm going to start with Senator Bramnick, because I have a photo of him as a middle school basketball player in Plainfield. So.
Well, I was on the team. I don't recall ever actually playing, but my mom and dad were proud. Let's make it simple. I think you can get a pretty good coach for less than that. I do believe that those numbers are not necessary to find great coaches. So I would actually work hard to make sure, I'd say to the president of Rutgers, hey, look, we're going, and this is how you really do it. Say, hey, I like you, seem like a nice guy. You got to find a coach that's cheaper. And look, that's how it really works. And one other thing, do you think anybody's still watching this at 9 o'clock at night? I just want to, because I watch a Democratic debate, and I heard a lot of talking points, a lot of scripted answers. So we got to get off the scripted answers and the talking points for a while, or everyone's going to be checking out. Okay, so stay tuned. I guarantee you're going to hear some real stuff very soon. Okay, go ahead.
I don't believe we ought to be salary shaming anyone. If you added up all the sports salaries, you're going to save a drop in the bucket. Day one, first budget we propose in February 2026, I'm going to red line item veto $1 billion out of the Rutgers budget. It's that simple. We need to save big money, real money. Rutgers has to do something different. When Rutgers went to pay all these high-end sports guys, what do? They killed a lot of the club sports. Not every kid is going to go to the NFL. A lot of kids just want a well-rounded education. Unfortunately, Rutgers has become too expensive. They have too many professors. In 2021, they had more than 80 people making nearly $1 million a year. That is outrageous. I say we keep the coach as long as he starts winning. And let's make sure that we force Rutgers to cut their own budget. These are intelligent people. They can figure it out, but they're going to be short $1 billion.
Objection.
David, this state made a decision. The decision was to participate in the Big Ten. And when you mention those two particular coaches, if you look at their salaries compared to the salaries of coaches at other schools in the Big Ten, they're right where they need to be. They're very, very comparable. We made this decision. It requires an investment. We're hoping the investment is going to pay dividends. Because if Rutgers competes for a Big Ten championship and or a national championship in any one of those two major sports, we're going to be in the black, not in the red. So I'm not saying as governor I won't ask the leadership of any one of our public institutions to get their cost structure under control. But with regard to specific to sports, we decided to join the Big Ten. That requires an investment. I think it's reasonable to have a sufficient timeline to let that investment pay off.
Okay. I'm going to ask a follow-up. And I mean, look, one of the good things about debates is it helps undecided voters. If one of the coaches is undecided, he's ruled out Bramnick. Now it's between you two. But I want to ask this question.
Maybe the lieutenant governor could be the coach. They're looking for a second job, right?
I'll start with Mr. Chitterelli. Should higher education in New Jersey be autonomous, state colleges, state universities, or should the governor be actively involved in their governance?
Listen, there's too much to do, David. We have university presidents that are also extremely well compensated. It's their job to run their institution. Does that mean that I won't force collaboration? I think in some cases, higher ed is trying to be too many things to too many people. I do believe we need centers of excellence. If every one of our state colleges is trying to be all things to all students, they're competing with each other. And I think that's one of the things that's making it more expensive than it needs to be. So I'd like to work with our university colleges presidents to determine centers of excellence. What is Montclair going to specialize in that Stockton doesn't? So can we have that conversation? But listen, the governor's got a lot to do. This is a $50 billion enterprise with 60,000 employees, 9.5 million citizen customers, 1 million business customers, and it needs a hands-on CEO. But the best CEOs put the best people in place to help them run the ship. And I'm going to give them as much autonomy as possible. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to advocate for students and taxpayers that are subsidizing those institutions.
So when you say autonomous, you mean I'm not going to interfere with policies at a school like Rutgers when they capitulated and gave in to the demands of students or protesters who were breaking the law? No, I'm going to get involved. And I'm going to say, when these protesters violate the law and threaten the Jewish students' security, I'm going to be involved. I'm not going to go in and tell them how to teach courses. But when it comes to the security of students, I'm going to tell you right now, I went to see the president of Rutgers after that. And I said, how do you make a deal with people who are violating the law? How do you think the Jewish students felt about that? How did you give them these kind of benefits? And there were crazy benefits they got. You bet I'm going to be involved.
Bill Spadia.
I agree with John on that. I think it's a smart point. The governor's got to get involved at some level. I mean, look, if we've got schools that are going to try to force a COVID vax or force a flu shot, we need to step in and stop that. The forced masking, the absurdity of masking, which we now know, we need to stop that. The anti-Semitism that is running rampant on so many of these campuses, got to stop that. The pronouns, the propaganda, the anti-Americanism that's going on, all of this stuff. The governor needs to be involved, and I think that, you can control it to a certain level because of the level of state funding. Now, we'll leave $1 in that Rutgers budget from the state taxpayers so we can go in and fire some of these people.
So I'll start with Senator Bramnick on this. What's your plan to assure parents that when their child goes to school in the morning, they're going to return home for dinner safe and secure?
Probably one of the most serious issues facing our country. We want to make sure that those schools are secure. We want to make sure that the students are protected. That means in school districts are doing more and more to protect their students. When we were growing up, we had air raid drills, we have fire drills. Now they have a drill if there's a gunman at the school. That is more than scary for a young child. Every resource, including my Attorney General, is going to make sure that it's an extremely large priority to make sure that the students are protected in our school. We've passed bills already to do that, and we'll continue to do that under the Bramnick governorship.
Jack Chitterelli, you're next.
David, first and foremost, the governor gets to appoint the Attorney General and the 21 county prosecutors. They will all be on the same page as me with regard to not having sanctuary cities, us not being a sanctuary state, not encouraging illegal immigration. I think any mayor or police chief should be allowed to work in partnership with the federal agency to keep their communities safe. But specific to schools, I will tell you, as I go around the state, I see some school districts that have magnificent, state-of-the-art technology systems that help ensure safety for the students throughout the day, and it's done in partnership with the local PD. Not all school districts have that. So what I would like to do is have a discussion with the State Board of School Boards Association and the superintendents about how do we ensure that every school district is putting in place the best technologies to ensure the safeties of their students. And of course, many school districts have taken matters in their own hands by having cops on campus right in the school itself. But technology is the answer to keeping our students safe.
When you think about school shootings, in most cases, you're talking about folks that are addicted to something, they're on some kind of an opioid, they've got mental illness. So we're not doing enough as a state to address mental illness among young people. That's number one. Number two, you've got to harden the targets. I support armed school resource officers. I also support opening up our concealed carry permits to allow teachers that have a concealed carry permit to carry a firearm. They are the last defense, but most importantly, we have to solve crime and punishment and bail reform and allow our police officers to do their job. The fact that a cop can't go on campus and take a kid out who is drinking or smoking pot or whatever he's doing, that is unacceptable. But you harden the target, you allow people to exercise their constitutional rights, and you support the local school districts by cutting your overall costs. You can start to invest in the kind of technology he's talking about, but not until you change the cost of our schools.
And Mr. Spady, let me stick with you, and I'm going to. I have
Sure.
one more.
in this,
One more.
yes.
You mentioned the mental health crisis in our schools. I don't think any of you are going to doubt the seriousness of it. What can you do to help that?
Well, first of all, we have to empower folks that are experts in this field. You know, right now you have folks that come from other states that are counselors, mental health, addiction counselors. They sometimes go 9 to 12 months before they can be certified in New Jersey. That makes no sense to me. If you're certified in one state, we should accept that directly here. Number two, we need to start empowering parents. We have had a culture over the past really 20 years that has moved parents out of the conversation. So kids are on their own. We have counselors now in these schools encouraging little Johnny and telling him, hey, you might be little Jenny. You may be born in the wrong body. We are perpetuating a mental health crisis with the woke propaganda that's in our schools. So that's number one. Not every issue is just about funding.
I don't really think that's the reason we have a mental health crisis. We historically had communities where people lived in a neighborhood with the grandmother, the aunt and the uncle, the cousins, and people interacted and they found somebody who understood them and they felt as if they were connected. That's gone. People are isolated now. They're on their computers. They don't really interact. Their family has moved all over the country. We need to bring back the concept of communities. People need people. The more isolated they are, the more mental distress, mental issues arise. We have to actually, and we as leaders have to do that as well. This us versus them mentality that has taken over the United States of America must end. Kids see that. They see that hateful rhetoric. That's not what people are about. That adds to the stress of children. We need to show them we work together as leaders. They can work together with kids they disagree with.
Jack Citarelli.
David, for me, the key to the mental health crisis in our community is access, access, and access. Talk to any family that might have a family member who's in need of mental health services. It is tremendously difficult, if not too long, to get the services of a professional. And so in Somerset County, when I was a freeholder, we addressed this issue in the community. We were the first county to create a mental health clinic 24/7 that was available. Those psychiatrists, those psychologists, those licensed clinical social workers, those advanced practice nurses, they worked for county government at this clinic, and the community had access to quality care. So as governor, two things that I think that we need to address on a countywide basis. We can't expect the 564 towns to go it alone on this, but with regard to mental health and homelessness, we can have a partnership between state government and county government to address these critical needs in the community.
All right, that wraps up our segment on education. We're going to take another quick break before starting our next topic. Stay with us for the New Jersey Gubernatorial Primary Debate presented by Uber, live from the Donald N. Payne Senior School of Technology in Newark. Stay with us.
Everything is getting more expensive. Rent, groceries, insurance. Uber is essential to my passengers. Insurance has gone up. This is hard for people.
Join our fight to protect your access to affordable rides.
If you have chronic joint or back pain, this is probably where you spend your time. Might we suggest a better destination that's close to home? RWJ Barnabas Health, where orthopedic surgeons designed the surgical implants that are now used around the world, and where you'll be cared for by the same doctors that treat professional athletes and rising stars. Get back to what you've been missing. Orthopedic care. Do it right. Here, RWJ Barnabas Health.
Today, 52 million Americans own cryptocurrency.
We are the pioneers.
The visionaries.
The builders of a growing movement
with the power to democratize the old economic models
and create a world economy of the people.
For the people.
And by the people.
We are crypto.
This is the moment for us to make our voices heard.
We are the catalyst that will create a new world.
With our numbers.
With our voices.
With our votes.
We are crypto.
Karen's about to retire. Here's what's going into her retirement.
There's us. She raised us on our own.
10 years as my roller derby wife.
Three schools she's opened.
She's a mother.
I think we turned out all right.
She's a friend.
Our mothers could tell stories.
She's a teacher.
She may be retiring, but she's not done.
I'm never gonna stop. Retirement is the sum of your life's work. Now what? Get income for life and protect your life's work with Prudential.
Every child deserves a great public school that meets their needs. That's why many families take advantage of charter schools as an option that's free, public, and open to all. See what's possible. Find a charter school near you.
Jones, and we are live at the Donald M. Payne Senior School of Technology in Newark with the New Jersey New Jersey gubernatorial primary debate for the Republicans, presented by Uber. Now, our final round, we are focusing on crime and immigration. Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe is going to be taking the lead on this portion. We're still waiting for our audience to get back into their places and our candidates back in place before we send it over to Joey, and I think everybody's just about settled down now. Joey, back over to you.
So there are obviously a ton of important questions to ask related to immigration and to crime in New Jersey, but I'm going to focus first on the moment that's dominating the headlines right now, which is the charges that have been brought against Congresswoman LaMonica McIver for allegedly assaulting immigration officials when she was conducting an oversight visit at Delaney Hall in Newark. So I just want to ask you simply, she is claiming that these charges are politically motivated. Senator Bramnick, do you believe that these are politically motivated?
Well, let me first say, the law in New Jersey is very clear. If you touch a police officer, that's aggravated assault. Now, if I come to arrest Joey Fox, whether I'm right or wrong, David Wildstein cannot block me or touch me to get to arrest you. Now, you can sue me later because I shouldn't have arrested Joey Fox, but you cannot obstruct. So if the video shows a congressperson or anybody else is obstructing the arrest of an individual, that's what the law is. Now, I also saw that they dropped the charges against Ras Baraka. That's pretty quick. I've represented people on trespassing charges. That was pretty quick. So it sounds as if maybe those allegations weren't so strong. This one, based on what I saw in the video, and once again, I'll let justice, be heard. But you can't get in the way of an arrest. I mean, I hate to tell you, Congress, I don't like the fact that you're arresting Congress. I would hope we wouldn't do that. I would hope we wouldn't arrest mayors. I just think in this environment, she's got a little bit of a problem.
Bill Spadia. Bill.
I would hope that a member of Congress would have more sense than to hit a police officer. That's what I would hope. So I hope she is charged to the full extent of the law and serves whatever punishment is appropriate. We need to protect our members of law enforcement. This was a total political stunt by a bunch of folks that have Trump derangement syndrome and are complicit in the sanctuary state that is crushing our budget and endangering our community. So it's too bad they dropped the charges against Ras Baraka. But I'll tell you this, the Democrat Party is so radical in their leadership now, this might actually catapult him to the nomination. God willing.
First of all, this is a federal detention center that's detaining people that came here illegally and committed crimes. I don't know exactly what it is that we're protesting. Second of all, if these congressional people purposely set up their visit, and congressional people should have access to a federal detention center, if they did that purposely to benefit the mayor of Newark, who's a Democratic gubernatorial candidate, shame on them, and they should be dealt with by their congressional colleagues in Washington. But the video shows that this person, who you mentioned, laid her hands on another person. And so that to me says that the charges are legitimate.
So all I can tell you is pretty sad when we get to the point where our society is so divided that political leaders are being arrested and it's us versus them. Once again, this is a dangerous, dangerous foreshadowing of the future of our country if this continues, and we need to stop all of it.
So, Mr. Chettarelli, I want to follow up on something that both of your opponents briefly mentioned, which is the fact that interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba chose to drop the charges against Mayor Baraka. Do you think that was the right call?
I think it was the right call to level charges against the congressperson who laid hands on the law enforcement professional.
Well, but so I'll ask again. I mean, like, this was the original impetus for this was the arrest of Mayor Baraka.
I'm not an attorney.
Okay,
so I trust her judgment. I think she's done the right thing thus far, and that includes charging this congressperson for aggravated assault.
But that's my point. My point is, even if the arrest of Ras Baraka was improper, wrong, or there wasn't evidence, that's a different issue whether you can get involved. I'm recommending everyone, if you see a police officer arresting somebody, like, you can't stop it even if it's illegal. Even it's illegal, you can sue later for damages. So that's why I'm saying one has very little to do with the other.
Bill.
Well, I'd like to know if there'll be charges at any level to some of these Democratic mayors who are actively evading ICE and protecting the illegal residents that they have from capture. They're blocking the enforcement of the law. I'd like to see Alina Habba start to talk about that, because we cannot have elected officials actively and openly flaunting and breaking the law because of their political persuasions. It's outrageous.
So I'll drill down next on more of sort of the everyday worries that New Jerseyans have about crime. I think everyone on this stage is going to tell me that they would fight crime as governor and work to make New Jerseyans feel more safe. What specifically would you do to do that? I'll start with you, Mr. Spadia. What are 2 policies that right away you would work to implement that you think would bring down crime?
First thing I'm going to do on that very busy day one, very busy, is declare a state of emergency.
You give us a call down at Drumthwacket. I'll take your call.
You'll take my call?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. That's good. It's good to know.
On day one, I'm happy. Plan. Come on down for breakfast.
Day one, declare a state of emergency when it comes to public safety, and we're going to suspend bail reform. Bail reform has got to go. It is completely outrageous. Step 2 is we're going to empower the Attorney General to change the rules of engagement for our police officers. The way to get safe streets is we need our cops to be able to do their job. Right now, they're looking over their shoulder. They're worried about being the next viral video. They're worried about the governor's office and the AG coming after them for doing their job. This Attorney General charged a police officer in a shooting in South Jersey after the last AG said the police officer was doing his job. So we've got a politicized department in the AG's office now. We're going to end that. So end bail reform and start enforcing federal detainer orders, working directly with enforcement and removal operations. And I'm the only one on this stage who's had the conversation with Tom Homan about what that day one looks like.
John, we have a number of repeat offenders in this state, and part of that is there is no real effectual warrant squad, meaning there are thousands of warrants outstanding where there are people who violated the law, but the only reason we find them is because they're pulled over by accident or they're arrested for something else. We must start by making sure those warrants are executed and we bring those people to justice. We absolutely smart. No bad. The other one is juvenile justice. I don't think there is any. You could steal a car 4 times as a juvenile, you're not going to jail. The theory was, and I think it's a theory that I learned in law school, it's all about rehabilitation. Well, let me tell you about that 15 or 16-year-old who stole a car 4 times. I'm not sure you're going to rehabilitate him. Maybe you should put him away for a short period of time, or maybe for a long period of time.
Jack Titterone.
Joey, our local police chiefs report to the county prosecutors. The 21 county prosecutors appoint to the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the head law enforcement officer in the state. Mine will be on the same page as me in terms of getting rid of sanctuary cities, sanctuary state. Mine will be on the same page with me in reforming bail reform. It's been a failed experiment. We've created professional criminals. Talk to local police. Arrest, release, repeat is real. It's demoralizing for a cop to arrest somebody in the morning, have them be out by 1 in the afternoon, and they've committed the same crime in the next town over that afternoon. So I also think we need to stop with the getting rid of qualified immunity, stop with the civilian review boards with subpoena power. I don't have a problem with no-knock warrants. I don't have a problem with K-9s for crowd control. I don't have a problem necessarily with high-speed chases. Take the handcuffs off our local police. Let them do their jobs to keep our communities safe. What my parents always taught me is, if you've done nothing wrong, you got nothing to worry about.
You know what was demoralizing for our law enforcement? When Jack Ciattarelli in the Assembly said they were overpaid volunteers. That was demoralizing. So I think we are absolutely at a crossroads here where we need a governor who understands law enforcement, understands the sacrifice that they go through, and make sure that we empower them. Absolutely stand up for qualified immunity, get rid of bail reform, and fight for our police officers.
And if you
Both will get 30. Both get 30.
If you take a shot every time he lies, you'd be drunk by now, so I don't suggest you do that. But you want to talk about demoralizing local law enforcement, go to the videotape, and you'll see him talking about getting rid of all public pensions.
Wait, where can I find the videotape? Is there a website? Come on, Jack. Come on.
I'll take a look at it all on day one. We need to upgrade some of the offenses from a 3rd degree, which is a presumption of non-incarceration, to a presumption of incarceration, which is a basically a second degree, because some of these third degrees are pretty serious, especially in terms of car theft. And even the Democrats are jumping on on the bandwagon now, because they realize they're getting the same heat from their constituents. Let's make sure we want to treat criminals like they're criminals. That's a pretty simple concept. That's what I'm gonna do. You're a bad guy, you go to jail. Simple as that.
So I do want to ask one other question on this sort of broad topic, which is that, you know, crime statistics can be painted to, or can be interpreted to show a lot of different things. But in general, you know, crime statistics in New Jersey do not show a massive increase in violent crime, a massive increase in murders, anything like that. And there's sort of a separate problem of people's perceptions of how safe they are, of how much crime there is. So I'll start with you, Mr. Citarelli. How do you, in addition to dealing with actual crimes that happen, how do you work to sort of better those perceptions, even when crime isn't necessarily rising, but people are worried?
Joey, it's clear, nonviolent crime is down. To show you what a hypocrite Phil Murphy is, when the Bruin decision came down that said people have a right to carry and conceal, he had a press conference that said, watch violent crime go through the roof. 2 months ago, he had a press conference celebrating the decrease in violent crime across New Jersey. Nonviolent crime is through the roof. Break-ins and car thefts because of the professional criminals we've created through the failure of bail reform. So I couldn't disagree with you more. Look at the statistics. Nonviolent crime is up. And if you're a first-time nonviolent offender in my administration, what I'd like to see is criminal justice reform. When you come before the judge, first-time nonviolent offender, you could do your time, which costs taxpayers $50,000 a year. We give you an ankle bracelet, send you to vocational training for $50,000 a year, or you go in the military. But we're not letting you go just free. And let me say one other thing. That 14-year-old that was working for the gang in Newark that shot and killed a police officer while he was sitting in his car under Governor Citarelli and my Attorney General, that person will be tried as an adult.
Bill Spadia.
On this issue of crime, statistics are always misleading. If you look at Monmouth County, you have a double-digit increase in car thefts, and now 2/3 of those car thefts accompany a home invasion. So we have this escalation of nonviolent turning into potentially violent. So people are fearful, no doubt about it. In Louisiana, the new governor worked with the parish prosecutors to start charging 14-year-olds across the board. I mean, obviously, I favor the death penalty for cop killers. And I think that is something that is very important to get back. That obviously is something that's going to have to go through the legislature, but I favor that. But across the board, 14-year-olds for certain crimes that endanger people should be charged as adults. We've seen the closure of, I believe it's 5 county jails over the course of the last few years. We need to reopen them and fill them, and we're going to do that because when you end bail reform, you're going to end a lot of these repeat offenders.
Mr. Bremnick, I want to let you weigh in, but I also am curious, just because Mr. Spadia brought it up, would you support bringing back the death penalty as well?
Well, not only would I bring it back, but I was in the legislature on law and public safety when we had the hearings on the death penalty, and I always supported the death penalty, and I was against eliminating the death penalty, and I served on that committee. And I believe that in certain instances, the death penalty, when you murder and rape a child, okay, if you have absolutely no morals whatsoever, you should consider and know that you might be put to death. I don't have a problem for that. You know, if you do something that's so heinous, that's what society is going to do to you, 100%. So I have a voting record on that, not a radio record.
Mr. Citarelli, do you want to weigh in on that issue quickly too?
Certainly support the death penalty when it comes to things like serial killers, mass murderers, and terrorists.
Okay.
Mr. Spadia.
Oh, I thought I answered that
Yeah,
first.
he started the discussion.
I'm
so I think
sorry.
we
I'll
can
take
move
more
on.
time, that's fine.
My turn?
Now it's over to you.
Okay. There is a fundamental tension between local police who feel constrained by the state, you've all talked about that, and the real need for accountability. We know that the death penalty and bail reform are part of the Constitution, which can be changed, but what is an example of something state government needs to stop doing to allow local police to be able to safeguard their own communities? And we'll start with Assemblyman Citarelli.
We need to start by stopping this discussion about getting rid of qualified immunity for our local police. We need to stop with this discussion of having civilian review boards with subpoena power at the local level. We have a hard enough time finding people to serve on the Shady Tree Commission. We're going to ruin this profession. I think we need to take the handcuffs off. Murphy's Attorney General has said things like this: we're not doing no-knock warrants. Are we supposed to knock politely before entering if there's a mass murderer behind the door that we're trying to track down? I don't have a problem with no-knock warrants. I don't have a problem with canines for crowd control. I don't have a problem necessarily with high-speed chases. These are trained professionals. We've got flash mobs on our Jersey shore because of a lack of respect for law enforcement. We have curfews on our Jersey shore, our boardwalks. If you own one of those businesses and you only make your money 3 months out of the year and you have to close at 9 o'clock at night now because of flash mobs, let law enforcement do their job. My Attorney General will work in partnership with the 21 county prosecutors that let the local law enforcement community know we've got your back. You're trained professionals. We're going to let you do your job.
What?
It's gotten so
sorry.
crazy.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, John.
I pointed to Bill.
That's all right.
Well,
You
it's
started.
got. Oh, thanks. I'll yield my 2 minutes. I think the craziest piece of legislation in my two decades in the legislature was a police officer who sees a child who's 13 smoking marijuana and drinking beer cannot call the parents. If they call the parents, Phil Murphy signed the law that said the police officer is a criminal. That's as insane as it gets. And the Democrats wonder, hey, why is the state moving slightly to the right? Why are Republicans doing better than ever? That stuff's nuts. You're basically telling a police officer you can't call the parents. And then what happens is this gets out in the community because, be honest with you, some of them are better than some of the lawyers I know. They know when they get in trouble, and they know when they're not going to get in trouble. The word spreads pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden when they get pulled over, and you watch these shows, Cops, right? Everybody's talking back to the cops. I don't talk back to the police. I just apologize.
Bill Spadia.
What separates me from the two career politicians on this stage is that I am a man of action and courage. And I will use the power of the executive to solve these problems immediately. We can't wait. Our neighborhoods are in distress. Our police officers are concerned that they can't do their job. We have to use the power of the executive by declaring an emergency to uphold qualified immunity, to get rid of bail reform, to start enforcing federal detainer orders, and eventually, yes, we need to start charging all of these young kids who are involved in any level of gang activity as adults. So we have to be aggressive with how we do it. And I believe the only way to do that immediately as an executive in that first day is to declare a state of emergency, which I'm going to have the guts to do.
Micah, another very simple example under this Attorney General, when a law enforcement officer, even if they haven't discharged their firearm, they have to use a use of force report if they've removed it from the holster. I don't think that's right. Let's get our cops back out on the street. Under Governor Cettarelli, my Attorney General, and our 21 county prosecutors, our local police will not have to do a use of force report unless they discharged their firearm.
Okay. Is there any example of something Trenton needs to keep doing to ensure accountability of local police? And we'll start with Assemblyman. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I think they ought to keep doing. I think that we have a situation with expenditures and staffing in state government, and I think it's quite okay that some state government employees continue to work remotely from home. I don't know why you'd force every single person back to a state office. I think that we ought to be taking those state offices, especially on the Trenton waterfront, monetizing those, turning that into a destination where people feel safe and can spend money and bring in ratables and tax dollars and revenue. But I believe that the one thing that came out of COVID that will enable us to cut down on some congestion is allow certain state employees to continue working at home, and we're going to enforce that.
So, Micah, you want more accountability. The police officers are wearing cameras, body cams, 24/7. I don't know anybody in this room who wore a camera 24/7 and needs more accountability. Maybe the bad guys should wear cameras too. The bottom line here is they're under such surveillance now, there's nothing else you need to do. All you have to go is go to the videotape.
Final.
One thing that ultra-liberals have been promoting, which I'm totally against, is making internal affairs records going backward and forward public, making personnel records going backward and forward public in the name of accountability and transparency. These are employees, these are personnel records. I think there's a degree of privacy that's warranted. What I will say is that anytime a police chief has to discipline an officer, I think that could be shared with the mayor and township committee in executive session, so that the mayor and township committee, to whom the police chief is in part accountable, is familiar and is comfortable with the manner in which the police chief is handling the personnel matter. But let's be clear, under Governor Cettarelli.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
We're not going to be making internal affairs records or personnel records public going backward or forward. These are personnel issues. And let me say one other thing that people may not be aware of. When a local police officer is disciplined for whatever reason by a local police chief, after that's cleared and everything is taken care of appropriately, they have to go through another review. Another review in addition to how it was handled internally inside the department. I don't think that's appropriate.
You know, we can't get people to be police officers. They got to put signs up on the parkway asking you to be a state trooper. We used to have thousands of applicants. Now we have to go out and seek people, and that's because the scrutiny they're under. Enough is enough in terms of looking at these police officers. Give them a break.
We're moving to the next question, David Wildstein.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Spadea, Governor Spadea. Maybe I'll call you all governor for a little while.
Okay, not getting ahead of this. We've got 2 elections to win.
Governor Wildstein has a question.
But let me ask you, one of the very first things a governor will do is determine, and I've heard this over and over, you mentioned your attorney general. Describe to me what your interview with your attorney general candidates is going to be like.
Well, we're going to have some basic principles. Adherence to the U.S. Constitution, very important. Supporter of parental rights, very important. Supporter of qualified immunity, very important. And have a mentality that we need the pendulum now to swing back toward law enforcement. Ideally, I would love someone with experience in law enforcement to serve in that capacity.
John Bramnick.
I want someone who is fair, who is not looking to make a name for themselves, somebody who has experience as a prosecutor, but looks at every case fairly. I've seen prosecutors who don't do that. I want a prosecutor who's not looking to be the next governor, someone who's looking to be someone who's fair and judicious in every decision they make.
You've heard me say that we're getting rid of the sanctuary cities, the sanctuary state. My attorney general will be on the same page as me with regard to that. You've heard me talk about the need for bail reform, be on the same page as that. You've heard me give very specific examples of what we're going to do to allow local police to do their job. My attorney general. So what I'd like to speak to is where the attorney general comes from. I've already shared with you by state constitution, our police chiefs report to the county prosecutors, the 21 county prosecutors report to the AG. My strong preference is that my attorney general not be a trial attorney.
Oh, you want someone with no trial experience?
Somebody that comes from the county prosecutor role. That's somebody that interfaced with police chiefs on a daily basis. That's somebody that comes from the law enforcement side of being an attorney. My attorney general will be someone who served, preferably, as a former county prosecutor.
And I want to ask just very quickly, this should not be a question. This is either a yes or a no. I'll start with Mr. Spadea, go right down the line. What do you care more about? An attorney general who's going to share your views on issues, or an attorney general that can get confirmed by the Senate?
Oh, shared issues. We'll fight for the confirmations. Okay. It's about principles and standing on those principles.
What was the or, David? Shares my views or?
So the question is, do you want the attorney general that you want, or do you want to settle for somebody you could get through the Senate with senatorial courtesy and get 21 votes in confirmation?
I want an attorney general that, like the Supreme Court State Justice that I'll appoint, that New Jersey desperately needs. And right now, New Jersey desperately needs an attorney general that's going to support local law enforcement.
I don't think there's going to be a real problem getting my attorney general through the Judiciary Committee. I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I would strongly suggest to the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, I would suggest you support my attorney general. I have to support a number of their nominees for the bench, so it's a two-way street. You shut down my street, I'm closing your street. So I'm sure they're going to cooperate.
And And let me ask the last question. I could keep going on this one, but I'll stick with you, Senator Bramnick. The Office of Public Integrity and Accountability has faced a whole lot of criticism from both parties who say that they are misguided, who say they are sluggish, who say that they're not effectively doing their job. What will be your instructions to your Attorney General about fighting public corruption?
Don't make it political. I watched Chris Christie do this as the U.S. Attorney, and he had almost a perfect record for convictions. Unless it's beyond, well, one mistake. Okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was in his office. I'm sorry. Bottom line here is you have to have the evidence. You have to have a very strong case, and you believe you have a conviction. There's been some mistakes. There's no question about that. We've seen either not guilty verdicts or dismissals on some of the indictments. So I think they have to understand that, Attorney General, make sure you have a case. There's no question. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And don't choose people for political reasons.
Bill Spadia, then Jack Ciarelli.
What was that department again?
The Office of Public Integrity and Accountability.
Yeah, how many employees do they have? Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know what they do. I think we have law enforcement to help us get rid of public corruption. And right now, we're not doing a great job because we have too many layers of government, too many bureaucracies. We don't need another bureaucracy to tell us that we've got politicians who will take money to grant favors. We need to activate law enforcement aggressively, and the corruption can be rooted out. You don't need an extra layer of government to do that. So I would end the department. Line item veto.
Chris Christie once said that indicting and successfully prosecuting local public officials in New Jersey was like shooting fish in a barrel, because there's 564 towns, there's 21 counties, there's 600 school districts. There's a whole lot of authorities. That's a whole lot of people serving on a whole lot of public jurisdictions, and not all of them have the best intentions. So in order for that office to do its job properly, it needs the right leadership. The job of the elected governor is to make sure we put the right people in the right positions to do their job and protect the public trust.
I hope Chris is watching, because Jack's become his new best friend. This is unbelievable. I can't. Hope you're watching, Governor Christie. It's new.
Senator, I don't think he is.
He knows. He contributed to his primary campaign against Trump. Don't worry. Governor Christie knows.
Wait. This gentleman had Chris Christie on his radio show and tried to help him qualify for the New Hampshire primary to compete with Donald Trump.
You know, I was a radio
host. I like
host,
Chris Christie.
Right?
Okay.
We know that.
All right, I've got to take back control here.
It's what we do. We interview people.
You help Jack. So we're going to go over to Matt Rooney next with his next question.
I hate to interrupt all this discussion to Chris Christie, but we have to keep moving here. Now, this first question is for you, Senator Bramnick, but I have customized follow-ups for all of you, so don't worry. Each of you is pledged to end the sanctuary statehood policy enacted by Governor Phil Murphy in his first term, which prevents state and local authorities from working with federal immigration authorities. You've said it tonight on the stage. I've received your mailers. I've seen the ads. But each candidate on this stage has taken positions which could be interpreted as contradictory to the goal of ending sanctuary statehood. Senator Bramnick, you voted to confirm Matt Placken, the New Jersey Attorney General, who is actively suing the Trump administration over its immigration enforcement policies. Was your support for Attorney General Placken's nomination inconsistent with the goal of ending sanctuary statehood?
Well, of course not, because when a governor proposes an attorney general or other cabinet member, if that person meets the basic qualifications of that job, and I hope the Judiciary Committee in the Senate does the same thing for me, I'm not going to judge every decision that this person has made in the past. I am going to give that governor the right to pick his cabinet, just like I expect that Judiciary Committee to pick to support my cabinet officials. Now, I don't agree with a number of things Matt has done, but I do believe that there is some discretion that a governor is given when appointing an attorney general. But I will never permit a sanctuary state to exist as the governor of New Jersey.
Jack Ciarelli's next.
Well, I thought you said you were going to customize it, Matt.
Oh, we could do it that way too. That works.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep moving that way on the stage. Assemblyman Ciarelli, in your last run for governor, you endorsed granting driver's licenses to illegal aliens. Do you believe that position is inconsistent with the goal of ending sanctuary statehood?
I'm going to continue to work with the president. We spoke about that last week when we spoke about making the country and New Jersey safe again. We do that by getting rid of sanctuary cities, by getting rid of our sanctuary state status. I told him my attorney general will not be suing the White House for executive orders. We're not going to waste taxpayer dollars a day. We're going to show our support for what he's trying to do to keep the country safe. I'm going to follow his lead on the deportation plan. I do believe anybody that came here illegally, that committed the crimes in their place of origin, needs to go back. Anybody that came here illegally and has committed crimes since they got here needs to go back immediately. And then we're going to see what he's going to do with everyone else who's here illegally. And so at the end of the day, if he's going to deport all 14, 15, or 16 million, I support the president. He was elected on the promise of making the country safe again. If by chance there are people he's not going to deport, I believe we have to know who they are. We can't have people here not knowing who they are. When somebody comes here from a foreign country on a work visa, we give them a government-issued ID. Doesn't mean they get a right to vote. 17-year-olds get a driver's license, don't get a right to vote. We need to know who people are. That idea was given to me by police officers, local law enforcement. I believe it's a homeland security measure. If there are people who are not going to be deported for any reason, and let's not forget, the president did offer DACA back in his first term. If they're not going to be deported, we need to know who they are. We can't have them living in the shadows.
And Mr. Spadia, you've endorsed a pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens, which is a species of amnesty. Is your support for a pathway to citizenship consistent with the goal of ending sanctuary statehood?
So I love, let me talk to you at home now. If you're an undecided voter, what you're hearing tonight are talking points, political speak. You got one guy that just based on a textbook qualification would support somebody who has in their term in office as Attorney General has actively gone after parents and gone after school boards. You got the other guy who didn't answer the question. Clearly, he still supports driver's licenses for illegals. Now, to the question, I think it's funny that we have a moderator here that literally read an attack mail piece to ask me that question. Out of 15,000 hours of all of that I've said on the radio and TV, they found one clip from a TV show I did about 8 years ago, and in that clip, I was asked a question as to whether or not a legal visa holder who had run afoul of the system and became undocumented, should they have a pathway if they have no crime, they own a home, they are married with kids in school, paying their taxes, and I said, absolutely. Nowhere, Matt, have I ever advocated a pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens. That was a very specific point that I made, and actually, it's supported by the President of the United States.
I was attacked.
Is there something wrong with a legal pathway to citizenship? We're not talking about somebody who's staying here illegally. We're talking about creating some path for citizenship. That's supposed to be bad for a family that's been here for 25 years paying their taxes. You want to rule out any way they could be a citizen? Let me tell you something. That doesn't make any sense. I'm proud that you said, Mr. Spadia, that you might support a path for citizenship. Good work.
Matt, are you wrapped? Okay, so we're going to go next over to Joey Fox.
So we're going to try to fit in two more questions, so we'll try to make these last two quick. This is something that several of you already brought up tonight, but I want to hone in on it specifically, which is pop-up parties on the Jersey Shore. This is something that every summer, residents and local politicians on the Jersey Shore kind of raise again as an issue. I know that there have been bills in the legislature to deal with this. Mr. Spadia, what do you think should be done on a state level about these parties?
We need to empower law enforcement to arrest more people. I mean, there are local laws that are being violated in terms of the number of people that are gathering outside. We've handcuffed our police officers. So, I believe we need to start charging 14-year-olds as adults, as the governor in Louisiana and the parish prosecutors, they saw in Baton Rouge crime reduced by 40% when they started charging 14-year-olds as adults. We need to start treating criminals as criminals. And these pop-up parties are disruptive. They disturb the peace. They ruin local businesses. They put people in fear of their lives. It's 100% unacceptable, and the state needs to use state police assets and resources to shore up these shore towns to make sure they can protect themselves against this outrage.
First of all, I cannot believe that the state of New Jersey would ever permit what basically is a riot. I've heard in the political jargon, lock them up, lock them up, lock them up. You're in a riot at the Jersey Shore? lock them up. Make the parents drive down, okay, from wherever they are, let them come down and make sure that the parents are aware that these kids are out of control. I would give no leeway whatsoever to rioting anywhere, especially on the sacred ground of the Jersey Shore.
Jack Ciavarelli.
You know, Joey, I grew up at a time, and I think a lot of the people did too, that if your parents got a phone call from the local police, your teacher, or the nun at catechism, you were in serious trouble at home. I'd like us to get back to that day when we have respect for authority. But listen, the times call for different measures. We've got pop-up parties, we've got flash mobs, we've got juvenile crime because of bail reform, they're able to get out. Gangs are employing young people to commit crimes, and so we need to get tougher when juveniles are engaged in bad things in the community, and if that means serious reform to the juvenile justice system, then so be it. But we need to react. We're not going to have flash mobs on our Jersey Shore when I'm governor.
And so I want to end this debate before we get to closing statements on a question that's very specific to where we are right now, which is the city of Newark. It, like a lot of New Jersey cities, is a place where a lot of residents, most of whom are Black or Hispanic, feel left behind on the issues that we've talked about tonight, feel left behind on affordability issues, feel left behind on their local schools, feel left behind on combating crime. And so I just wanted to ask you three, how do you change that? You are three politicians who live in the suburbs, whose political bases are in the suburbs. What is your message for urban New Jersey about how you will fix their problems? I'll start with you again, Mr. Spadia.
Well, in Newark in particular, you've got and have had a series of failed mayors. Cory Booker, now Ross Baraka. It's a disaster. 9 out of 10 kids can't perform at grade level. You have a crisis with lead in the water. You've got streets that are in disrepair. You have a lack of jobs. And you've got a fear among parents that someone might get shot walking their kid to school. It's outrageous. The commitment I have made in Newark is twofold. Number one, we're going to force school choice to give parents an opportunity to get their kids out of these failed schools. Number two, we're going to create opportunity zones. You know, one of the things that we didn't talk about or touch on tonight, we have 200,000 manufacturing jobs in New Jersey. That's down from about 500,000 just 10 or 12 years ago. We need to double the number of manufacturing jobs. And what I have proposed is a 10-year moratorium on corporate taxes for any business that will come into a place like Camden, like Newark, and the job will be very simple. 100% legal employees and 80% local. And we're going to be able to house them and bring housing prices down by using the affordable housing units that we take out of the suburbs and put them into the city. The other thing on the water issue, very quickly, we've seen success, and I've met with New Jersey American Water on this. They have a huge plan and opportunity where they invest their millions of dollars to revamp the water system on behalf of the taxpayers and the ratepayers, not $1 coming from the public funds. That can happen. It's worked in the suburbs. It will work in the cities.
John Bremnick.
So I was an urban councilman for 7 years in Plainfield, and we cannot ignore our urban centers. What we need to do, incentivize people to move there. For example, we could actually supplement and assist the building of luxury housing and eliminate any state income tax for those individuals who are willing to pay for expensive luxury housing, and we start to develop, because we do it with incentives. Instead of somebody going to Florida, I can say, hey, guess what? I got another idea for you not to pay state income tax, because people go to Florida all the time, so they don't want to pay the state income tax. How about if we say, hey, listen, I got an idea, urban center. We're going to create an incentive for you to move there. Those are the kind of creative projects we need.
Jack Ciavarelli.
Joey, the first thing I'm going to do is remind the voters of Newark, Trenton, Atlantic City as 3 examples. The Democratic Party takes them for granted. Phil Murphy promised them 8 years, economic justice, educational justice, environmental justice. It's been promise made, promises broken. And so, and I also remind, if you want change, you got to make a change. So the first thing I do as governor is improve the educational systems. The other thing is we got to get people to want to live in our urban centers again. I spoke before a business group in Atlantic City 2 weeks ago and reminded them that 100 years ago, 1925, the population of Atlantic City was 52,000. It's 37,000 today. What would 15,000 more residents mean to the local economy? So with the compelling housing, which I'm going to make happen, safe communities, good public education, recreational opportunities, people will live in our cities again, and we can achieve that kind of economic development and renaissance without failing on gentrification.
All right, believe it or not, our time for questions and answers has wrapped up, and it is time now to go to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds, and we determined the order by a random draw. Bill Spadea, you're going to go first, followed by John Bramnick, and then Jack Tittarelli. Bill Spadea, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to everyone who tuned in, and I hope that you saw there is a clear distinction between the candidates here on stage, a very clear distinction, and as the only outsider on both sides of the aisle, the only one that has not held political office and worked as an insider, my two opponents have a combined 80 years as political insiders. If you want more of the same, you've got two choices right here. If we're going to break the status quo, if we're going to get back to a time where New Jersey is affordable, I remember a time growing up in the 70s, born in Camden, grew up in Cherry Hill, where you had working class folks able to afford a second home at the Jersey Shore. That just doesn't happen today. We've got out of control crime, an education system that is failing, a transportation infrastructure that is failing. And guys, for me, it's personal. Look, I'm the only pro-life candidate running for governor who's endorsed by National Right to Life and New Jersey Right to Life. I am the only candidate with an A rating from the NRA, and I'm the only former U.S. Marine on this stage. Now, when Jody and I got married 30 years ago, we made a decision to plant our roots, build our family, grow our business, and live our lives in New Jersey. I hope and pray to be able to retire, to be able to afford to retire in New Jersey and help with our family, our kids, and our grandkids. This is personal. I stand for common sense. I am the only outsider on both sides of the aisle. You want more of the same? You got these two guys. If you want something different, if you want to shake this up and break the status quo and return affordability, return public safety, and restore common sense and integrity and accountability to government, then send in the Marine.
John Bramnick, your closing statement. John Bramnick.
Unfortunately, Democrats don't want him, so he's going to... So I think Bill Spadea was right. There is a distinction between the people on stage, and you can see it. Sound bites and scripts that are written for you, and everything you polled, then you repeat over and over again, hoping that the people out in television land hear you say those sound bites. That's not what I'm about. 20 years in the legislature, my concern was take care of constituents. Make sure you make people feel good about living in New Jersey. Make sure you create an environment to bring businesses back in New Jersey. Make sure that people know that we're one state, that we treat each other with respect. That doesn't mean that we don't follow the principles of the Republican Party. If we do that, if we follow the basic principles of the Republican Party, we will win overwhelmingly in November. If we simply follow some new script of hateful rhetoric, of us versus them, we are going to lose. Let's stand together as the Republican Party and show that our history is about less government and concern for fellow man. And if you vote for John Bramnick, I guarantee you everything I said today will not change, as it hasn't for my 20 years in the legislature. No sound bites, just real stuff from a guy who'd like to be your governor. Thank you.
Jack Tittarelli.
The goal is to win in November, and I wouldn't be asking Republicans for the nomination unless I believed I was the best candidate to deliver that win, and President Trump agrees, and that's why I'm honored to have his endorsement. He endorsed me because of the energy I bring to the campaign. He endorsed me because of the ability to raise money. You need to be able to raise money. I've raised more money than my two opponents combined. You needed a candidate that's going to have coattails. We had coattails back in 2021. We flipped 8 seats. It was our most successful night in 34 years. We can flip at least 13 seats this year with me leading the ticket, and that produces a Republican majority in our state assembly for the first time in 35 years. We need a candidate who's going to point out the difference between the Democratic nominee and myself. They worry about pronouns. I worry about property taxes. They worry about supporting illegals and setting criminals free. I worry about supporting our local police and keeping our communities safe. They worry about a public school curriculum that's age inappropriate and not respecting parental rights. I care about parental rights. I care about the curriculum, and I care whether or not our children are being taught the skills they need to get a job right after high school because of vocational training or to get into college. This is what differentiates me from my opponents, and we'll get this done over the course of this campaign. Unlike governors on both sides of the aisle over the last 40 years, I'm not using this as a stepping stone to get to Washington. My only ambition is to fix New Jersey. I have very specific policy proposals. I'm an MBA CPA, I'm a 2-time successful business owner, and I've served at every level of government, term limiting myself every single time. It's a very unique resume for a gubernatorial candidate. We can win in November, and Donald Trump agrees, and I'm honored to have his endorsement.
That brings us to the end of tonight's New Jersey gubernatorial Republican primary debate presented by Umer. Streaming is sponsored by Stand with Crypto and sponsored by RWJ Barnabas Health at Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'd like to thank our panelists, David Wildstein, Joey Fikes, Micah Rasmussen, Matt Rooney already ditched out on us. And also, we'd like to thank our candidates for joining us, Bill Spadia, Jack Chitterelli, John Bramnick, and thank you to our audience, and thank you also everyone at home for watching. Stay tuned because we have a post-debate show as well as our coverage of the press gaggle where you're going to hear from each of the candidates. If you didn't get enough right now, we got more. It just keeps going and going. A reminder, if you have a vote by mail ballot, make sure you return that into a secure ballot drop box. In-person early voting starts on June 3rd, and primary election day is June 10th. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.